The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive. But we break on command 'cause women rule the world. Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa Nicole Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, November 10th, Sunday, November 11th for those of you on the East Coast and beyond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a rockin' week, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, TessaTNT, and I'm live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. We are 150,000 strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read the encounter online dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. Well, tonight I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight we are talking to and getting to know author Steve Ubaney. Mr. Ubaney is the holder of 4 college degrees and has been inducted into multiple national and international honor societies. He is a recent graduate of the University of Buffalo with a BA in Communication and Media Theory. Writing as a novice, Mr. Ubaney published numerous OP/EDs in multiple newspapers. He also authored articles that were published in magazines and trade publications. In 2013, he merged his love of history with his quest for the truth, and he became the architect of the Who Murdered book series. Since the inception of this series, numerous volumes have been published as he works toward the completion of 6-volume set, which is scheduled for completion in 2022. His research in numerous subjects has made him a frequent guest on television, radio, and podcast programs worldwide, as his knowledge into his subject matter is quite in-depth. Since the publication of the first volume in the series, Who Murdered Elvis, his work has generated a cult following, and it is not uncommon for physical copies of his books to sell for hundreds of dollars on the open market. Mr. Ubaney's family history is a fascinating one. The unsubstantiated work of one ancestral researcher claims that his family can be traced back to the cousins of the Virgin Mother and 2 members of the Knights Templar. The work is in process to validate that claim. What has been sustained is that he is a direct descendant of Charlemagne and his 10th grandfather, William Chase, who came to America on the Winthrop fleet in 1630. William Chase's son Benjamin married Philippa Sherman, daughter of the Honorable Philip Sherman, who was the first Secretary of Rhode Island. Mr. Ubaney is the 10th great-grandchild of Philip Sherman. And there's a lot to read here, and I can go through the bloodline, a bloodline horrific that he shares with Susan B. Anthony, the women's rights advocate, Henry Crapo, 14th governor of Michigan, James Sherman, 27th U.S. Vice President, Sir Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister, Christopher Lloyd, movie actor, Janis Joplin, singer and songwriter, Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, that's pretty awesome, George H.W. Bush, 41st President, Mamie Eisenhower, First Lady of President Eisenhower, Marilyn Monroe, actress, George W. Bush, 43rd U.S. President, Jeb Bush, 43rd Governor of Florida. He is also cousins with the following people: Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence, Herbert Hoover, 31st U.S. President, John Lithgow, stage, TV, and movie actor, Robert Treat Paine, signer of Declaration of Independence, Sir Robert Borden, 8th Prime Minister of Canada, William Tecumseh Sherman, General, Union Army, U.S. Civil War, Lucretia Garfield, First Lady of President Garfield, Harriet Beecher Stowe, author of Uncle Tom's Cabin, Tennessee Williams, author of A Streetcar Named Desire, William Howard Taft, 27th U.S. President, Charles Edward Merrill, founder of Merrill Lynch, Henry Fonda, movie actor, Norman Rockwell, American artist, William Rufus Day, 36th U.S. Secretary of State, John Steinbeck, author of The Grapes of Wrath, and Aaron Rodgers, NFL quarterback. Many of Mr. Ubaney's ancestors fought for America's independence in the Revolutionary War. Ubaney's great-grandfather, Samuel Kidder, was among those who fired the first shots in the American Revolution in an effort to repel the British at the Battle of Lexington on April 19, 1775. Another ancestor, Peter Pinnock, fought with several of his brothers in the Battle of Saratoga on October 17, 1777. 8 of Pinnock's brothers answered the call of battle. 3 were killed. A book written by descendant Lee Pinnock Huntington depicted the events. The book entitled Brothers in Arms was published in 1976 and was used as reference material in the public school system to aid in the teaching of the Revolutionary War. William Fox Jr. of Palatine, New York, and his father, Captain William Fox Sr., are also direct ancestors of Mr. Ubaney's, who fought in as many as 4 battles against the British. Among them were the Battle of Oriskany on the Mohawk Valley, New York, which was August 6, 1777, and the Battle of Saratoga, New York, October 5, 1777. It has been said that the story of the Fox family has the basis for the 1939 film Drums Along the Mohawk. Another of Ubaney's great-grandfathers, Conrad Neer Sr., was killed fighting the British on October 19, 1780, at the Battle of Clarksfield in Stone, Arabia, New York. Soon after, his 7-year-old son, Conrad Jr., was kidnapped by Indians and taken to a prison camp in Canada. While imprisoned in a Canada, basically British soldier, was that the boy was wearing his father's mason ring and freedom. So that's pretty cool. Conrad eventually found his way to Choctaw, Chautauqua, I'm sorry, County, New York, where Mr. Ubaney and his many relatives reside. In honor of his ancestors who fought and died for his country's freedom, Mr. Ubaney joined the Sons of the American Revolution in 2009. He is currently missing one document that is preventing him from joining the General Society of Mayflower Descendants. It is believed that the missing document was lost in a fire that destroyed a church in Vermont along with most of the town's records. Apparently, these fires were a common occurrence in that period of American history. It has been said that less than 1% of American population can trace their lineage to the Mayflower voyage. The search for the missing document continues. Well, Steve, welcome, and that's a pretty awesome bio. I can't believe all the amazing people you're related to.
Yeah, that must have been painful for you to read.
It wasn't too bad. There was that one I was like, is that Choctaw? No, it's not. No, it's so
Chautauqua.
interesting. Chautauqua, that's it.
Yeah, Chautauqua, it's an Indian.
Yeah, and Rano in the chat room, he's like, yeah, it's Chautauqua. Come on, get your act together. So it's so great to have you on the show tonight. I know we scheduled this a while back, but I'm so grateful and so honored to have you on the show tonight.
Well, thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I know it took a little bit of doing to make this happen, but I'm happy we did. I mean, I'm really thrilled. I'm always thrilled to talk about my work, and so I'm just honored to be here.
So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What led you on the path to writing all these books?
Well, I never believed what we were taught in high school. You have to give them the answer that they want in history class to get your grade and get out of the class. But I remember thinking, come on, some of these things just can't be true. And in the case of FDR, I never believed his death, and certainly, well, not in history class, but I never believed for a minute what happened to Elvis Presley. I remember where Elvis was. I remember where I was when Elvis died. And the story kept changing and changing and changing. And so I kind of just, I'm a guy who likes to poke holes in things and question things. And I kind of mixed that with my love of history and my love of Elvis. And, I wrote my first book, Who Murdered Elvis, in 2013 to finally tell the truth. I get tired of people profiting from twisting the story. So, what I uncovered was something I'm sorry I uncovered, actually. But the truth has to be told.
Yeah, for sure. And when I was looking at your website and looking through your books, I noticed that you actually have a second, more in-depth book on Who Murdered Elvis.
Yeah, and the name of the website, I want to tell people up front, I'm butting heads with Amazon. Amazon is, they're getting ridiculous with their fees, and I have no interest in passing on a 40% fee to everyone else, so I'm not going to increase the book price for you guys to compensate for Amazon. So my website is whomurderedbooks.com, whomurderedbooks.com, lowercase one word. Go to my website, buy one, I'll get you a copy, and I'm not going to charge $25 like Amazon. They're like $16. And with the holidays coming up, I don't know where you can scratch somebody off your Christmas list for $16. So it might be a pretty Christmas gift as well. If people like Elvis or conspiracy or history or cold case, things like that, or celebrity, I think it'd be a good fit for them.
For sure.
So as far as the two Elvis books are concerned, 2013 was the first Who Murdered Elvis, and then I published Who Murdered FDR, and then by that time it was 5 years from the first Who Murdered Elvis, and the second Who Murdered Elvis is Who Murdered Elvis, the 5th anniversary edition, is all the stuff that happened to me personally in the time the first one was the first one hit the society. Threats against me, people who, the National Enquirer, I think it was, who took my work out of my book and claimed it was theirs. I mean, you have no idea what's happened to me. It's really, it's incredible, really. So that's what, in the second book, the 5th anniversary edition, is just a full embodiment of the kind of the rest of the story. So it's part 1, part 2 sort of thing.
Well, that's awesome, and it's cool that you keep, finding more and more information on that to add to it.
And you're going to have to give me your address because I want to send you a copy of that book.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yes, I will.
Well, I think we have a little delay here going on over our connection, but yeah, I will. I'll give you a complimentary copy so you can read that for yourself.
Yeah, you are kind of cutting in and out occasionally, but it's not bad. I mean, if you feel like it's an issue, I can always call you on your phone number, and then we can try it that way. It's totally up to you. But yeah, we are kind of cutting in and out a tad. And I don't know what that's all about. Technology. It's supposed to make everything easier, but it tends to make things more difficult.
Absolutely. You might have to call me because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into Elvis Presley's death.
Okay, well, let me go back over here to Skype, and I'll put your number in there, and then I can call you back on there, and let's see if that's a better connection. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, let's give that a shot.
Okay. Uno momento, por favor, to all of our listeners. Alright, so I'm going to enter his number in real quick. Hopefully we have a better connection because I want to hear every single little detail going on here. Let's see. Alright, so we're ringing him right now. There you are.
Hi, is this better?
Yeah, you're not cutting in and out as much. The sound quality is a bit different, but like I was telling everybody, I want to hear every single thing you say, so I'm hoping this does work out better for us.
Okay, perfect. Well, I hope I can live up to the to that bio. That's quite a bio. It's amazing what you come up with, the people who are related and interrelated in your family tree, and it's crazy. It really is. I mean, being descended from all of those people, and it's a hoot. I didn't know about this until like 2 years ago. It's crazy.
How did you find all this out? Did you do like an Ancestry.com or some sort of like DNA thing, or did somebody really delve into the family tree? How'd you find out about all of these amazing relatives?
Well, what happened was my mother is a researcher for the Daughters of the American Revolution. So that Sherman line, William Tecumseh Sherman, who was the Union general, was already well-researched. So all we had to do was link to that, and everything else was already done for us. So we got lucky in that vein. On the other side of the family, we got contacted by cousins in Ireland who already had the research. So we didn't go the Ancestry.com route. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just something that we didn't do that way. That way. So we kind of got lucky. It was really something. I'm related to Republicans and Democrats alike. Look at that.
How does that happen? But I agree with
especially in today's world. How can that possibly happen?
Right. And I agree with doing the ancestry in Ireland. When I was doing mine, my dad's name was John O'Brien Thomas, but my great-great-grandfather was John O'Brien, great-great-great-grandfather John O'Brien, and you go over and they're like, there's so many John O'Briens, we don't know which one it is, but, the wife being Mary Catherine Gallagher, if you can believe that. I always think of SNL. But yeah, like you would think their marriage records or whatever, but like you're saying, back in the day, there's been so many fires and so many different things that happen, so many things are lost, and then coming over to Ellis Island or whatnot, you don't write it yourself, somebody else writes it for you, and there was a couple discrepancies there, and so yeah, it is a battle to find out your roots and where exactly you come from, but more and more stuff comes up all the time, and it's so interesting.
Well, my name is completely fictitious. You'll never run across another Ubaney in the planet Earth. It's because it was butchered from an Italian name. My father's Sicilian, my mother's Irish. And the Sicilian name it came over was something totally different, but I won't bore your listeners with that. I'm sure they're didn't all of that. But as for the Elvis book, I'm sure that's what everybody wants to hear about. It's this Elvis book. First, we'll get to that one. I guess we'll talk a little bit about FDR a little later on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very interested in the Who Murdered Tesla as well, because Tesla is one of, the forefronts that I really look up to. Like, there were so many things that he did for us that we didn't get to really take part in because of, Eisenhower or whoever else that came in. No, it was Edison, sorry. Because they want to charge for energy. Like, he had this whole thing going with the free energy thing, and they totally just basically murdered his character before he was actually murdered. And then when he was, they take all of his things, and there's only 3 crates left? I mean, it was insane.
Yeah, it was a full-on character assassination. And I remember saying Tesla was murdered 10 years ago. And everybody's like, oh, you're crazy, you're a conspiracy guy, and this and that. And, people like to label things that they don't understand. I've noticed that. They'll label you for something because it needs to make sense in their mind. So when they label you, they're really doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for you because they don't know what you are. If that round peg can't fit in that round hole, if you're an oblong peg or a square peg, you're just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they label you and throw you aside. So, it's true. I was telling everybody Tesla's death is mysterious, guys. Somebody needs to look into this. And now all of a sudden, because of the car company, it's free press. They're digging into it, and it's all over the place. Very interesting stuff. In the case of Elvis Presley, I was watching the 30th anniversary of his death, and I was watching the candlelight vigils and, the same thing that happens almost every year, especially on a 5 or a 0 year, 30 or 35 or 25, what have you. And I'm listening to the people talk who found this guy's body, and none of them could agree on anything. And I realized, look, after a time, the sharp edges are going to blur and you're going to forget certain things, but they couldn't agree on where the body was found. Kind of a big deal. His road manager, Joe Esposito, at the hospital, they interviewed him on camera. He said that Elvis was dead in bed. You go on YouTube, you can find the video. And then an hour later, he was interviewed by my friend Dan Warlick, who was working for the medical examiner, who's actually went through Graceland and was at the autopsy. He told Dan Warlick he was found dead on the floor in front of the toilet. This is a magical corpse. They couldn't agree on the time of day.
Right.
They couldn't agree on what color. They couldn't agree on what color pajamas the man had on. I mean, it's like, well, wait a minute, So, just being an Elvis fan, I started to look into this, and it started out just to be curiosity bedtime reading. And when I got into it, I started to meet some of the people who knew Elvis. I met one of the guys at the autopsy, and I came up to a very sobering conclusion that I really didn't want to come up to. I never wanted to know Elvis was murdered. But when you have Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, very, very deep in the mob, and Nixon giving Elvis the federal narcotics badge, this is not going to end well. So Elvis died mysteriously shortly before he was supposed to turn state's evidence against the mob. So what had happened was Elvis was getting death threats, and he wanted to carry a gun because he was flying around. He wanted to carry a gun in all of the states, and he needed the federal credential in which to do so. So he was getting death threats to the point where, there are bars on Graceland for a reason. They're gone now. Of course, you don't want a national landmark with bars on the windows. But if you go back and look, and you go back in the pictures, there are bars on the windows for a reason. Graceland was very much the same as Michael Corleone's compound in The Godfather 2. Walls, guards, gates, closed-circuit TVs, everyone was martial arts trained, including Elvis and all of his Memphis Mafia, who most of them died last year, by the way. So he needed this federal credential. So he goes to Nixon, gets his federal narcotics badge so he can carry guns, and he and his crew could carry guns in whatever state they want. Because he was starting to get involved in some things he should not have been involved in. One of the things Nixon asked him to do was pose FBI agents as band members when he played the Las Vegas Hilton for 2 months a year. Their job was to investigate the mob in Las Vegas. Well, if we know anything about the mob in Las Vegas in the 1970s, they had almost every hotel room bugged. They were all caught. And this is what happened to Elvis. And, the story that has been planted out there, that, Elvis died of drugs, and, what was prescribed to Elvis and what Elvis was taking was entirely two different things. Elvis was having financial problems in 76. He almost went bankrupt. And in 1973, Priscilla wanted a bigger chunk of the divorce, so he had to sell all of his rights to all of his music royalties to satisfy her. So the only money he had, he was a #1 taxpayer in Tennessee in those years. So the only money that he had was by doing tours at breakneck speed. So the money was coming in as fast as it was going out. So he, his father had seized control of his finances. And he didn't like the fact that Dr. Nicopolis, Elvis's doctor, that Elvis was paying for the medicines for all of his crew. So Elvis said, look, I don't want to get an earful from my dad. He said, just write all of the prescriptions for all the painkillers in my name and just put them in the pool, and whoever takes what takes what. That's how all the prescriptions ended up in Elvis Presley's name. Elvis wasn't taking these drugs. If there were 1 or 2 left, Elvis might take them.
Right.
But, it was just the stories that have been out there have been planted out there. And they've been planted out there for a reason. The longer we spend looking for a live Elvis Presley at Burger King, the less time we spend trying to solve a cold case murder. Because the murderer is still out there. It's incredible. This is a hell of a book. You got to read this book. I know it's kind of a short show. I did 3.5 hours on Coast to Coast on this one subject, and I know we want to talk about FDR too, so I'm going to try and gloss over as much as I can. There were 3 toxicology reports done on Elvis Presley. Well, first I'll put down the drug rumor, okay, and the heart attack rumor. Dan Warlick, who I ended up being very good friends with, who died last year, was the only person on planet Earth who had been investigating the upstairs of Graceland and was at the autopsy and helped take out Elvis Presley's organs. Dan and a fellow named Noel Florendo took Elvis Presley's heart out and took his brain out. Okay, they shook the hand that took Elvis Presley's brain out. That's creepy.
Right.
Well, what they did was they sliced Elvis Presley's heart every 1/4 inch, and they held it up to the light, and they looked at it through a microscope, looking for clots, looking for something, looking for anything that would figure out if this was a natural death by heart problems. Elvis Presley had no heart disease. They were looking for some sort of hemorrhaging or clotting or something that would indicate that there was some sort of problem here. They found nothing. They went through Elvis Presley's brain, did the same thing. Painstaking hours, cut it every 1/4 inch. There was no sign of clotting or anything in Elvis Presley's brain. So Elvis Presley did not die of a heart attack. He had no problems brain-wise. There was no stroke. There was no nothing. And the stories came out. His medical examiner, without one fingerprint being lifted from Graceland, or without any of the toxicology reports back, he holds a press conference and tells the waiting world Elvis Presley died in a regular heartbeat. Well, in order to determine AFib, or an irregular heartbeat, you'd have to listen to the heart while it was beating.
Mm-hmm.
You can't establish that post-mortem. So they just told everybody something to just let it go away. And then, of course, 1979 comes along. Geraldo Rivera in ABC's 2020 starts pushing this drug story. And that's actually debunked in my book as well. Elvis Presley, there were 3 toxicology reports done. When they find the body, they march up the stairs at Graceland. Dan Warlick, Jerry Stauffer, and another man, I can't recall his name at the time. They go by Vernon, who is doubled over in grief, screaming, "They've murdered my son." That's kind of a telling thing. And it's worth mentioning at this point that other people knew that this guy was murdered. Dick Robb, Elvis's chief of security, knew he was murdered. Susanna Lee, one of his co-stars on Paradise Hawaiian Style, was one of Elvis's friends. She knew he was murdered. Dr. Nicopolis, if you go to my website and you go down to the bottom of one of the Elvis pages, you can watch Elvis Presley's doctor on Inside Edition in 1990 tell everybody Elvis Presley was murdered. But for some reason, everyone is ignoring this story. So Vernon Presley, Elvis Presley's father, right after the funeral, he knew Elvis was murdered. He tried to get someone in the state of Tennessee to conduct a murder investigation. Nobody would do it. And later on, I found out why. It was being stopped way high up the ladder. So what he did was he hired two private investigators to solve the murder. And they were getting very close. Unfortunately, Vernon died in 1979, 10 years after Elvis did. So my book is the only one that really completes Vernon's probe on this. And I've got 10 years into Elvis's death now between the two books. So very interesting stuff. The first toxicology report came back. Well, they said, let me back up a little bit. They said when they're loading him into the ambulance, we think he OD'd. So if all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail. So they're looking for these drugs. Where are these drugs? So they do toxicology report after toxicology report. And they do two of them, one at the University of Tennessee, and it comes up that there were 4 drugs in his body, but they were between trace and therapeutic levels. So there are 4 types of levels when you do toxicology. Trace, therapeutic, which is what a doctor would describe, and then there's toxic, which would make you sick, and then there's lethal, which what we all know what lethal is, it would kill you. In the case of Elvis Presley, there were 4 drugs that were found in his body that were depressants that he was given to go to sleep every night, and they were between trace and therapeutic. Elvis Presley did not die of a drug overdose. So they still weren't happy with that one, so they took it to another laboratory in Tennessee and came back the same thing. So they weren't happy with that, so they sent this to bioscience laboratories in California. They took tissue samples, packed them in dry ice, sent them overnight, wanted to get to the bottom of this. So it comes back that there's codeine in his body at 11 times the lethal level and this and that and the other thing. And they give this ridiculous paper document to Dr. Cyril Weck, my friend Cyril, who announces to the world on ABC 2020 that Elvis had this cocktail of drugs in him and this was the real story. But, there's a problem. Elvis Presley was allergic to codeine. As a matter of fact, he almost died of anaphylactic shock in 1969 when one of the dentists gave him codeine for some dental work.
Oh, wow.
The first thing they did when they got Elvis Presley's body in the autopsy is dissect his vocal cords, looking for swelling. There's no anaphylactic shock in his body, which means there's no codeine in his body. So if there's no codeine in the body, how does it show up at 11 times the lethal level in the toxicology report? So it's starting to get a little deep. So we're starting to get into and if you go that far, you have to ask yourself, who the hell put it there?
Mm-hmm.
So we're starting to get really deep into Elvis Presley's, who Elvis Presley actually was. Colonel Parker, his manager, the background on this guy is incredible. And he was not Tom Parker. His name was not Tom Parker. He was not a colonel. He wasn't even an American citizen, actually. He was born in the Netherlands. His name was Andreas Van Koo. And he worked in the carnivals. And he worked on the docks, and he was trying to save enough money to go to America. And he worked his way up from being just a kid who watered animals at the circus to walking shoulder to shoulder with some of the principals and learning how to be a pitchman. So he was stowing all this money away to come to America and did it big. So, everything was going according to plan until May 17th, 1929, when this woman was murdered. This storekeeper was murdered, and that was the night that Andreas Van Koo disappeared in the Netherlands, and Colonel Parker appeared in America. So he gets to America, goes in the Army to escape prosecution if they find him. While in the Army, he goes AWOL. And they catch him, and they put him back, and they put him in solitary confinement. And they go to re-enlist him, put him back into service, and they realize that he has a mental disorder. He has psychopathic tendencies now.
Uh-oh.
So he is released in an American society, and when he's released, he takes the name of his commanding officer, Tom Parker. And he adds Colonel in front of it to give it more legitimacy. So here this guy is, 20-some years old. He's a murdering psychopath with an alias, wandering the streets of America. So, and because he's so good at carnival barking and being a pitchman, he starts to manage acts. And some of the people, the singing people and the talent that this guy ended up representing was incredible. He represented Minnie Pearl, Hank Snow, Gene Austin, Clay Acuff, June Carter Cash, which of course went on to be Johnny Cash's wife, and Eddie Arnold. He signed an exclusive agreement to be Eddie Arnold's manager. Started out to be a 25-75 split. So through booking Eddie Arnold in Vegas and all of these places, he met people like Milton Prell. Milton Prell was part of the Detroit Syndicate, who owned the Bingo Club and the Sahara. He also bought the Aladdin and the Mint. You don't get booked in Vegas unless you know these people.
Right.
And Colonel Parker knew these people in spades. So, he ended up being very good friends with Milton Prell, to the point where when Elvis Presley was married, he was married in Milton Prell's hotel, the Aladdin. Elvis was so thick with mob around him, this guy couldn't breathe. So one of the other people that he met, probably one of the more important players in the 50s and 60s in Las Vegas, was Mo Dallas. Mo was part of the Cleveland Syndicate, who won the Stardust in the Desert Inn, but that was his front. He was out there to be a close ally to Meyer Lansky and Jimmy Hoffa. So Mo Dallas is one of the people who made Frank Sinatra. And if you look in my book, there's pictures of Elvis Presley with Mo Dallas and Elvis Presley with Milton Prell. So they were so thick around this guy, Elvis couldn't plan his own wedding. He was flown out in Frank Sinatra's plane, got married at Mo Dallas's hotel. And I mean, the mob was just so thick around this guy that he just couldn't even breathe. So here we have Colonel Parker, who's going 25-75. He was taking 25%. Elvis is getting 75%. But out of Elvis's 75%, he's paying for all the business expenses. Well, fast forward to the movie years, the scripts are getting worse. Elvis starts to disobey and not show up at the studio because the scripts are so ridiculous. And it got to the point where he was made painfully aware of who owned him and what was going on. Colonel Parker came up, the studio came up, RCA came up, and I know somebody who's in the room, actually. I actually know someone who heard this, but I'm not going to mention their name. They're no longer with us, and I think that's in bad taste. But Elvis was told, you're going to do these scripts and you're going to do these movies, or you're not going to do anything else. And they weren't threatening his career. It was the first time that Elvis finally understood how hijacked his life actually was by these people. So after this meeting, everyone else leaves. Colonel Parker grabs him by the arm, pulls him into a room. Again, I know the person who was there. And Colonel Parker says, okay, now since I'm doing all this work for you, I'm going to alter the deal from 25/75 to 50/50. And he said, and I'm going to backdate it from the beginning of the year. This was June. So Elvis couldn't do anything. Colonel Parker had all the balls, and he had all the mob behind him. There was nothing Elvis could do. So this was part of the catalyst of Elvis getting to be a black belt, carrying. He went gun crazy. He stood at Sonny West's wedding, his best man, with 4 guns on him. You know, two in his boot, 1 behind his back, 1 in his shirt. You know, and it was his way. Getting a federal narcotics badge from Nixon was his way of railing against Colonel Parker and the mob. It was really sad. And
yeah,
then
he's
we
like
get to
looking
the point,
for a way out. Like, I couldn't imagine.
oh my God, what happened to probably the nicest guy and the great, and I know people who knew him.
Mm-hmm.
In life and in death, actually. Actually, I never thought about that. Probably one of the nicest guys and one of the greatest natural talents we've ever had, in the way that this guy just got abused was incredible. You know, I mean, he had golden handcuffs. He was in a velvet jail. Elvis couldn't be Elvis. They ran everything.
Yeah.
When they were doing those stupid beach films, he was cranking out a film every month. And they were working him so hard, it got to the point where he was having nosebleeds that wouldn't stop. So the doctor would be called in, and they'd say, you know, what's going on here? You know, why is he having nosebleeds? And they said, you've been working this guy so hard, he has no resistance left.
Well, you could also tell in his appearance, like, he just looked so tired and wore down. Like, poor guy.
What happened with Elvis, and what happened towards the end, no one really knew until the autopsy came. The reason why Elvis looked so fat and pasty at the last concert and so forth is the same reason that he couldn't have been on the toilet. Elvis Presley had a twisted colon. It was a birth defect.
Mm-hmm.
And you mix that with downers, and Elvis hadn't had a bowel movement for almost 4 weeks.
Wow.
And they do this thing at the autopsy called running the gut, where they take out a person's intestines and they take a flat-billed pair of scissors and they cut up it and see what's in it. In the case of Elvis Presley, he had clay-like white fecal matter that was so impacted, the scissors couldn't even cut through it. So you hear stories about him being in the toilet. He was never on the toilet. The wet spot from his regurgitation, the shag carpeting, was almost 6 feet away from the toilet. You're going to fall off the toilet, you're going to fall 3-4 feet. Unless, of course, you're 22 feet tall, you know.
Right?
You know, this is 6 feet away from the toilet. Elvis was never on the toilet. You know, it's the crap that gets regurgitated through history. And then they have the story, Elvis was playing racquetball the night before he died, which is impossible. His cousin Billy Smith said that he whacked his shin with a racket, and it was hard enough to stop the game, and it's impossible. There were no marks on Elvis. There was no mark on Elvis's shin at the autopsy. They looked over every single inch of this guy, looking for all kinds of things. And nobody is going to be playing a racquetball marathon being jam-packed with fecal matter. I got news for you. This guy had to be in excruciating pain.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that kind of describes all of that. As far as this Elvis is alive thing, this has really got to stop. And I was in that camp for a long time, so I'm not going to talk bad about those people, because the evidence that they are uncovering has been planted there for them to uncover. There are insurance policies that were never cashed in on Elvis. There was some evidence that he filled out his death certificates. There were 2 death certificates filed, by the way. One contradicted the other, one by the medical examiner and one by his doctor. And, and this Elvis is alive thing, what they're finding has been planted there for them to find. And, and Susanna Lee actually shed some light on this Elvis is alive thing. She told me she did Paradise and Wine style with Elvis, and they were friends right until the end. And she said that there were 2, because Elvis was doing these films at breakneck speed, and he was so run down, they had to find people who looked like him to do some of the faraway shots, so Elvis could be in the studio laying down the soundtrack for the movies. So there was one of the guys' names was Matt, the other name was John, and these people were the same size, and they were surgically altered to look like Elvis. As a matter of fact, there's a famous photo of Susanna Lee in Paradise and Weinstein with her arms around Elvis, and it's not Elvis.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this is how closely these people look. Elvis's face was very triangular. This guy's face is very U-shaped. And if you look, you'll see the picture. When you get off, you're going to look. I know you're going to look. Mm-hmm. You'll see this picture, and you'll know for sure, now that you've been told, this guy has jowls, Elvis's face was pointy, not Elvis. So back to the Elvis is alive thing, that's what these people are seeing. They're seeing these Elvis lookalikes out there who are basically the same age, and they're mixing that with the planted evidence that has been out there for them to find. And again, I don't think that Lisa Marie, who's been through hell, by the way, I don't think that she would be struggling with the struggles that she's had throughout her life if Elvis was alive. It's damaging, really, because now this guy has great-grandchildren, and, they have to, sit around at Thanksgiving dinner and wonder if Elvis is going to pop in. It's damaging now. It's gone too far, especially when we have the evidence to prove otherwise. It's really something.
Yeah, and you'd also... Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say, also, the bars and such on the windows, like, he was really in fear for his life and for certain things happening, and, just the things he was surrounded by and the different threats and whatnot and his life being controlled, like, let's put bars on the windows to protect ourselves and, carrying the guns and all this other stuff. I mean, it had to be crazy. And like you said, Lisa Marie, she really did go through hell for quite a long time and still continue to.
Yeah, it's rough because, she's a little girl when her parents divorced, which is hard enough, and especially when your father is, probably more famous than anybody who's ever been famous. So you go from, go-kart rides and pony rides and paradise to having everything crash down. And then a couple years later, the poor guy dies. And she's there when he dies. And it's really sad. But Elvis Presley was really mistreated throughout his life. He wanted to do different material, and he would intentionally do bad shows, thinking that Colonel Parker would certainly see this. There was one, and again, I'm not gonna mention this person's name because I said he's no longer with us. But he was a friend. Elvis did an entire concert laying on his back one time, just laying down on stage. And he was trying to get across to Colonel Parker, I want to change this. And Colonel Parker was the most degenerate gambler probably in history. And his thing was, as long as we're selling out and making money, don't change it. And Elvis had so much more in the tank that he wanted to do. He wanted to be a serious dramatic actor. Elvis Presley was offered the starring role in the original movie The Star is Born, with Barbra Streisand.
Oh, wow.
And Colonel Yeah, Colonel Parker jacked the price up on Elvis so high it was fiscally impossible.
Jeez.
Elvis was kept in his place. And there's a reason he was kept in his place. When Elvis died, Colonel Parker owed the mob casinos $32 million in gambling debts.
Holy shnikes.
You know, at a time when the average American is bringing home $5,800 a year, Colonel Parker was gambling $1 million a night. And Elvis was delivered as the payola for the payback to the gambling tables because Elvis would sell out. So they make the money back that way. So, in my book, in all of my books, I run down the motive, means, and opportunity, and I come up with the one person who did this guy in. And it's incredible, really. When you think about, what happened. I don't think I've told you the story yet about the investigation of the upstairs at Graceland.
Nope. I'd love to hear it.
Elvis Presley had 2 head-to-toe physicals a month before he died from Lloyd's of London, and 2 weeks before he died for another insurance company. He had to do this yearly. So he dies, and there was nothing wrong with this guy. You know, I mean, you hear the stories about this and that. It's ridiculous, especially how far it's gone and how twisted it's become. So they race out with the ambulance. They tell to take this corpse. I mean, Elvis had been dead, long dead. He was so grossly colored, and they thought he was a black man. I mean, he had been dead for a long time.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what everybody was doing.
Well, some people were not where they were supposed to be, and I addressed that in my book, and I've caught some heat for it, but I always say the truth might hurt, but it should never be hidden. There were a couple people who were not where they were supposed to be. So they take the body down the stairs, the EMTs, and they get to they're putting it into the ambulance, and Dr. Nick shows up. He had been called by Joe Esposito when this happened, and off they go. The ambulance is going to Baptist Memorial Hospital, which is not the closest hospital, by the way, but that's a hospital that they know that they can control the truth at. Okay, so Elvis's personal nurse worked there. So the body goes out. The medical examiner, Jerry T. Francisco, who's also the same medical examiner, by the way, who botched Martin Luther King's autopsy 9 years earlier. They were both murdered in Memphis. Mm-hmm. He dispatches his investigator, along with the district attorney and one of the sheriff's deputies, to go and look and see what they can find. So Graceland is a beehive of activity. Graceland's on lockdown. Police have been left at the downstairs to make sure that no one does anything stupid, because you have fans at the gates down at Graceland about 12 deep, and they're about ready to riot. It's August. It's hot. They're grief-stricken. They want answers, and they're afraid they're going to rush the gate. So police are everywhere for crowd control. Fortunately, nothing happened, because there's no way that they could have controlled it. So in comes Dan Warwick, Jerry Stauffer, and this other guy's name is just escaping me. I'm sorry. I'll come up with it here in a minute. But they go up the stairs at Graceland. No man's land. No one is upstairs at Graceland. Even today, you can't get upstairs. So they walk up, plain sight in Elvis's office. They see a syringe. And they look at it very carefully. And Dan Warlick told me it wasn't a syringe like you see at the doctor's office. It was a syringe that it was like a skeleton type of syringe. In other words, you put the cartridge in it, and the cartridge would have the needle attached. It was almost like a caulking gun, only a syringe for a syringe. You put the cartridge in, and it was empty. There was no needle in it. And they walk into Elvis Presley's bedroom, and which is lavishly decorated with his 8-foot wide bed. And they were walking around, and there are guns everywhere.
Wow.
Elvis, he had AK-47s, he had machine guns, he had pistols, he had everything. So they carefully touch all the guns. They're all cold. There's no shootout or anything. They walk up. There's another syringe. Same situation, no needle. Almost as though it was placed there for them to find. Turn to the right, and they go into Elvis Presley's bathroom, which is his favorite place in the house because he had a library in there.
Right.
He was reading everything.
And I hate to interrupt, Stephen, but we actually have to go to our first break. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Hey, guess what? You can now get your brand new Spaced Out Radio swag at spacedoutradio.com. We've brought the store back with all new items for you to pick out and pick up for yourself, your family, or friends. T-shirts, hoodies, hats, we got it all. All you have to do is head to our website and click on Store. Choose what you want and it's shipped to you. The Spaced Out Radio store is right there for you. Come shop with us at spacedoutradio.com. Then we can own the night together.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
On the first Tuesday of every month, I encourage you to come along for a journey with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You. Together, we will take a look at how to access the highest expression of yourself and change your life. Consciousness, ET contact, health, and wellness, we can talk about it all. So come along for a spiritual ride with me, Geraldine Orozco, on The Spiritual You, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Coming soon to our website, spacedoutradio.com, is the SOR Space Travelers Club. For just $5 a month, you can get into a private area on our site where you can hang with other listeners in our chat room, post in our forum, and check out a bunch of exclusive content and store that won't be found anywhere else, including a nightly after-show party with Dave. It's going to be the best $5 a month you're going to spend. The SOR Space Travelers, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
If you're heading to Vancouver, make sure you stop by the official bar of Spaced Out Radio, the Moose Vancouver. It's the place to party in YVR. At the corner of Nelson and Granville, the Moose Vancouver is always up to speed with a kitchen staff that serves great food. All food on the menu, $6.95 to $8.95. There's a reason the Moose Vancouver is recognized as one of the hottest spots on the West Coast. Get your horns up for the Moose Vancouver.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hello, this is your guitar man, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, and I have to tell you, I love the response I get for Little Brother is Watching from Spaced Out Radio fans. It's amazing how music can inspire and make people think deeper about what's going on in the supernatural world. You can head over to my website, bumblefoot.com, to check out my music, my guitar workshops, my touring, even check out some of the hot sauces that I'm working on. And make sure you keep on listening, because with Spaced Out Radio, you know Little Brother is watching.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT, on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now, back to Spaced Out Weekend host, Tessa Nicole Thomas.
Hear the sound again, voices dancing in my head, smile wide, drowning slowly as...
Hey guys, welcome back and thanks so much for tuning in tonight. Tonight we have the author Steve Ubaney. Welcome back. It's so great to have you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hope I'm not boring everyone with all this.
Oh, heck no. I'm on the edge of my seat.
There's an awful lot of information here, and I'm doing my best to give the condensed version, because this is just it's just a pillar of information. I can't begin to tell you how much information this is. So, you guys, I'll tell you what, you get out there and buy this book. I'm telling you, go buy Who Murdered Elvis or the 5th anniversary edition, and you'll see exactly what 10 years of research into Elvis Presley's death, the facts, the real facts of Elvis Presley's death can produce. Interesting stuff. So
sure.
when we last, we were in Elvis's bathroom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Elvis loved to read, and he was one of these people who would read things on psychic energy, and he loved to read up on prescription drugs. So he was so worried about when he almost died from anaphylactic shock from codeine in '69, pretty terrifying when you can't breathe and you're itchy and everything. So he asked his doctor, Dr. Nicopolis, for the physician's desk reference, so he could read up on all the drugs and he could know what to take with what. And you show this guy a drug, you show him a medication, he'll tell you, who made it, what you can take it with. I mean, this guy, there's no way he was mistaking one drug for the next. That's the theory that was out there, too. So he has a black leather barber's chair that he is using to read. It's a comfortable thing for him to read. So they walk into this bathroom, which is his Superman had his fortress of solitude. Elvis Presley had his upstairs bathroom. That was it. It was his place to get away from the world. And they look, and there's a black leather doctor's bag on the vanity top. It was like a countertop among the aerosol cans and aftershave bottles, and it's wide open. Nothing in it. There's not even a baby aspirin in this house. No drugs at all. The entire bag is empty. So they were looking at the countertop, and there's a book that had knocked over some aerosol cans. And then they started to notice that there's evidence of a struggle. So they're taking photos and writing down notes, and the EMTs are coming back to pick up their bags. And Ulysses Jones and Charles Crosby were the EMTs. Ulysses Jones went on to be a politician in the state of Tennessee, again, who was no longer with us. So they come back, and they're all in the same room, and they're saying, well, wait a minute. This room has all been cleaned up. Our bags weren't over there. Somebody's cleaned this up.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that when you're saying there's no drugs in the bag, I'm like, okay, somebody cleaned house.
So Dan Warlick turns back and he looks at the bed. The bed's made up. So somebody has been in there, and they've even gone so far as to use cleanser to try and clean the wet spot on the floor where Elvis either aspirated and or regurgitated.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no way you can have any sort of a thorough investigation. So at this point in time, Joe Esposito shows up and starts to lead them away from the place. And Dan Warlick is interviewing people. Where was the body found? And none of the stories are lining up. Ginger Alden had Elvis falling out of a chair. Joe Esposito had him dead in bed, and an hour later he was dead in front of the toilet. It's clear that everyone is lying about some truth that no one is willing to share. So Dan Warlick goes to the autopsy, does his thing. Well, he goes back to Jerry Francisco and says, hey, wait a minute, there's something going on here. Sanitized death scene, we got drug syringes, so he looks over Elvis Presley's corpse literally with a microscope, or with a magnifying glass, looking for needle marks. Not a needle mark on the guy. So he's trying to explain to Jerry Francisco, hey, look, we've got an issue here. The stories aren't aligning. We've got this and that going on. Francisco doesn't want to hear it. He says, come join me for the autopsy. So the autopsy is over. They have found nothing that would keep this person from being on stage. He did say that his heart was enlarged, or in his words, he had a big old flabby heart, but nothing that would have caused death or anything like that. So Dan Warlick goes home for the night, goes to his apartment, leaves his notes and photos and everything from Graceland on the seat. Comes down in the morning, his car has been burglarized. The only thing missing were the notes and the photos of the death scene. In a conspiracy everything must be trimmed. All ends must be trimmed off. So someone is very, very desirous of Elvis Presley being rubbed out. So the condition of the corpse is actually pretty conducive. It has all the signs of a mob hit. Sanitized death scene, same thing as Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe's death scene was staged, actually, because when your heart stops beating, it cools at the lowest level. And it creates a thing called livor mortis. Not rigor mortis, that's muscle. Livor mortis is when you start to get the color on your skin. If you die on your back, you'll get it on your back because that's the lowest part. In the case of Marilyn Monroe, she had livor mortis, which was the reddish, purple, black coloring on the opposite side of her face. So that death scene was sanitized and changed. Elvis's death scene was sanitized and changed. In the case of JFK, you got JFK, they're trying to save this poor guy's life. He's got Secret Service with a bucket and a sponge cleaning out the car. They're cleaning the blood splatter out of the car, for God's
That's evidence! Leave it alone!
I mean, it's like, if you look at Elvis Presley's murder, as a singular thing, it's like looking at a blade of grass on a lawn, for God's sake. It's crazy. Elvis Presley died nude from the waist down. This is something the mob does to tough guys. Same thing to Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was supposed to take a dive when he fought Chuck Wepner. He beat Chuck Wepner so bad he gave him 55 stitches in his face. Sonny Liston's death scene was almost the same way, nude from the waist down. Benito Mussolini, nude from the waist down. This is what they do to tough guys. The telltale sign. It's a mob thing. Okay. In the case of JFK, the pristine bullet set Oswald up as a shooter. In the case of Elvis Presley, the fictitious drug thing set Dr. Nick up is the person to go on trial. He's drug patsy. The other one was a shooting patsy. The parallels are absolutely incredible. When you start looking at this thing over and over and over again, it's just mind-boggling. So you hit 76, and Elvis is having Elvis was a sick man. I'm not going to downplay that. But he was still turning dates, and he was still selling out, but he was also canceling dates. Elvis had a litany of issues. He had high blood sugar, he had high blood pressure, and he was starting to have some issues. And the primary one was his twisted colon, who he was scheduled for surgery to have surgery on. And he was really struggling and battling a lot of health issues. So in doing so, he was canceling dates. When you cancel dates, you don't make any money.
And then the Colonel gets mad.
Yeah, here you go. So the Colonel's on the hook for the Colonel's on the hook for the gambling money. The dancing monkey's not dancing anymore. Colonel's getting nervous they're going to rub him out. And you can see where this is going. So Colonel Parker tried selling his contract. And it was an article that ran in the Nashville Banner, which is a newspaper, and I wonder if that newspaper is still in business, but it was a Nashville Banner. Somebody picked it up, and it ran, and there were a couple of business moguls in New York City interested in buying Elvis Presley's contract. At the same time that happened, 3 of his fired bodyguards, which Vernon had fired, his father, to stay solvent in 76, had started a book, Elvis What Happened. And it was a lurid tell-all book that was mostly fictitious, unflattering things about Elvis, set out to ruin him. And they were in the middle of negotiations to sell Elvis Presley's contract when his book hit the stands, and that was the end of the negotiation. So all of this is a whirlwind around Elvis Presley. He also started writing people out of his will. Elvis's father, who was in the middle of a divorce, and when Elvis died, there were 2 wills. there were so many people in 1977 who wanted Elvis Presley dead, it was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
He had single-handedly managed to piss off almost everyone around him, including the federal government. So, I mean, it's an incredible thing. The airplane, to throw all of this into the mix, his father is trying to make Elvis solvent in 1976, and he's selling one of his smaller planes called a Jetstar. Elvis called it the Hound Dog too, and it was dry docked, and it was bought in September of '75 for $899,000. And they go to sell it. They find a buyer. The buyer says, look, borrow more money, bring the plane up the code. I'll take the plane and I'll just cut you checks every month and you'll get more than your money back on the plane. Well, Vernon says, great. So they borrow more money against the plane. The plane disappears and no money comes in. The person who stole the plane from Elvis Presley was a guy named Frederick Peter Crow, who was an international mob boss who the FBI had been watching for 10 years. Even
Go figure, right?
Yeah. So all of this is swirling around Elvis Presley, and of course no one knows this because you have the Memphis Mafia, Elvis's tight-knit group around him. No, nothing gets into Elvis, nothing gets out from Elvis. So, and I think this is why the fascination continues today, because, we still really know very little about what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, very interesting book. If you're an Elvis fan, somebody who likes Elvis or history or cold case or murder mysteries, go to whomurderedbooks.com, buy a book. I'll make sure you get it, and I'm not going to charge you $25 like Amazon. Bezos doesn't need your money. He's got enough money. Buy the book at a cheaper price on my website, and I'll make sure I take care of you there. So,
yeah, I'm such a frugal person. Book. Like, that's the route I would go. F Amazon. Like, I'm going to your website to buy your book for cheaper. Because
what I did is I'm fighting with Amazon to the point where I actually pulled the book off Amazon.
Wow.
Because they're taking 40% out of me every time I sell a book. So that means I have to add 40% to the cost to meet my costs, and I just don't feel it fair to I want to make my book affordable for everyone, and I don't think it's fair to jack the price up so they can take more. I don't think it's fair at all. So at the moment, the only place it's available is at whomurderedbooks.com. So that is the lurid story of Elvis Presley's death in short order.
Yeah, and you're talking about all these things. If you're a fan of Elvis, if you're a fan of cold case or mysteries or all that, like, I'm a fan of all those things, and I always feel weird to say, as a kid, even though Elvis was already dead, watching different shows and reading different things and listening to his music, like, even for my 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th birthdays, I was asking for Elvis CDs, and I must say, like, he was my first, like, heartthrob as far as, musicians and such. He was my first crush as far as musicians or actors or anything went, even though he was dead already, which is kind of weird. But yeah, Elvis was amazing, and he was a very talented guy, and he served our country, and he was very handsome. And could you imagine if his brother had lived? Like, what a freaking crazy dynamic duo they would have made. I could not even wrap my mind around it. My head would have probably exploded.
It's funny, the first 2 chapters in that book deals with exactly what you're talking about. Elvis Presley's birth, everything, the whole shot, and then it goes into his life, and then it explains the murder. So, I mean, it is the whole thing on Elvis. Interesting thing about Elvis Presley, now that I've met several people, 3 in the Memphis Mafia, a couple of friends, and of course, Dan Warlick, who knew him in death, no one knew that Elvis was extremely charitable. I mean, he bought people Cadillacs, and he bought one of his friends, Jerry Schilling, he bought him a house. He went to Author School with Jerry Schilling. And Jerry Schilling was one of the people. Jerry Schilling and Lamar Fike, I think, were two people who were around Elvis that really cared about the guy. Not everybody around Elvis cared about the guy. A lot of people just cared about what they could sponge off of him. But, I mean, those two were really, they really liked the guy. And he bought one of them a house. You know, it was really incredible. After Elvis died, Vernon Presley started getting letters from families around Graceland. Elvis Presley was financially supporting 31 needy families in and around Memphis, and wasn't telling anyone.
Well, yeah, and he sang that song about the ghetto and such, and, you know, he had a huge heart, and he actually did. He gave so much more than anybody, like Shar said in the chat room, he donated so much more than anyone ever knew, because it wasn't about, hey, I gave to this, hey, I gave to that. It wasn't about his ego and boosting that. It was about helping his fellow man.
He was a good human being. I mean, he was, you know, for being as big as he was. I mean, you go 3/4 of the way around the world, there are people in grass huts who don't even have running water. They have a picture of Elvis. You know, I mean, it's insane. You know, those Chilean miners a couple of years ago, they got stuck down in that mine. You know, they weren't singing Beatles songs. They were singing Elvis songs. You know, the penetration, the worldwide penetration at a time where there was no social media or fax machines is incredible, really. How famous this guy was and how humble he was. And one of the people in particular, I'd love to be able to name this person, but I promised I wouldn't, said that Elvis was incredibly sad. There was a sadness about him. And he never got over losing his twin. He never got over, he was tormented in high school. I mean, God almighty, they always tried to hold him down and cut his hair, and they threw eggs at him.
Jeez.
You know, it was the crew cut, you know, conservative 1950s, and here you have this kid who with wild clothes and dressed like James Dean playing that raunchy hillbilly music, and they tormented this kid like you wouldn't believe. So Elvis had a tremendous sadness, which started from that, and after his mother died. And I've heard people say that, you know, oh, he died young because his mother died young. What happened with Gladys, and I don't like to talk about this much because I don't like to put a bad light on anyone. When I write about a person, I like to honor the person. Mm-hmm. I'm doing it because I'm doing a justice for them. There was a rumor that came out in '56 when Elvis was making his rocket to fame, and you know, we look at it now, we don't understand, but you know, Elvis came of age with television and portable record players. And I would tell everybody to go to Graceland and bow to the master, because without Elvis Presley coming out, there would be no Motown, there would be no Michael Jackson, there would be no one of color on record. There would have been no British invasion. Someone had to pierce the veil.
Right, he was like the original R&B or whatnot.
Oh God, I mean, it was John Lennon said it best: before Elvis, there was nothing. So go to Graceland, bow to the master, and push yourself in the period of 1956, 57.
Well, speaking of Graceland, you got to go there, and you actually went into the meditation garden, and you actually met his uncle?
Yeah, I've been there twice. The very first time I met his uncle, and my mother was so excited. She had this damn camera. This was long before digital. You know, you had to go to like Photomat and wait. You know.
Yeah.
And she snapped this picture of Vester, which is Vernon's brother, Uncle Vester, and you can see it's him, but she's got his finger over his face because of that damn camera she had. $1 million shot, and it gets ruined.
Right. Like, thanks, Mom. But, damn.
Yeah, it was really something. I've been there twice actually, and it's really something. But you know, as far as, you know, before Elvis came along, kids didn't have their own identities. There weren't commercials to kids for breakfast cereals. They didn't have any identity. They were sitting around listening to whatever their parents were listening to. So Elvis saved us from listening to How Much Is That Doggy in the Window, and kids all of a sudden had they had their own identities, their own music for the first time. So, all of that, there's innumerable ways that Elvis Presley changed. Elvis Presley changed the world, and you look at it today, and people really don't understand. But, it's really something. Back to what I was saying about 1956. In 1956, what happened to Elvis's mother, Gladys, and this is where I went off on my little tangent there. There was a rumor that came out. It was a very serious rumor that Elvis Presley shot his mother.
Oh.
And they were, well, if you can't kill the message, you kill the messenger. Well, they were not very happy. They were breaking his records because it was the demonic music and this and that, or so they thought. So they started some very serious rumors about him to try and ruin him. One of them was that he shot it. You can't make this up. You really can't. So Colonel Parker said, look, I'd like to get your mother into some photos with you so we can put this rumor down. So the problem was Gladys was a little pudgy, and Colonel Parker didn't want her in the pictures because didn't think it would be a good reflection on Elvis. So he was trying to get her slimmed down, and he was giving her diet pills. Unfortunately, she was also an alcoholic.
Oh no!
So when you mix whiskey with diet pills, it tends not to end well.
Right.
And that's what happened with Elvis Presley's mother.
Yeah.
It wasn't that he had a bad heart because it was the genetic thing or anything like that.
Yeah, and you're talking about his dad, and when I watch different movies and read different things, you always hear about his mom. You never hear about his dad. Did his dad leave early on in his life and then come back later on when he had made it big, or how exactly did that happen?
The only time he really left is he got arrested and got sent to a penitentiary. He was raising you have to put yourself in the time period at Tupelo, Mississippi in the 30s. I mean, they were dirt poor. They lived in a house that their family had built for them on their grandparents' lot of land. So, I mean, you're dealing with, a raw shack for raw people. This is basically what they built. It was built just before Christmas. And Vernon and Bester and their father, Elvis's grandfather, built it. And they built it just in time for Christmas and just in time for Elvis's birth. So Elvis's father was a farmer, and he was raising a hog for slaughter, and he needed the money from that hog because he had a new baby coming, and he wanted to buy Elvis. So the fellow that he was working for was going to buy the hog, and he would only give him, I think it was $8 for the hog, and it was worth well more than $8. So Vernon's a young man at this time, and he made a stupid mistake. He got the check for the hog, put a 1 in front of the 8, forged the other guy's name. 3 people were in on it, and all 3 of them got sent to the penitentiary. So that was the only time that he was really separated from the mother. Meanwhile, he's in the penitentiary. The family loses their house, and they're really having a tough time. So this is why Elvis and his mother created such a bond, because for a time during his formative years, Vernon was gone, So, and then later on, of course, she died, and Vernon remarried, and all kinds of things.
Yeah, and I can also understand where his sadness and such came from losing his twin, because no matter what, there's that amazing connection that they have because they are split from the same seed, basically, and they, just losing that part of him must have been pretty dire. But Dell in the chat room was asking, do you have your TessaTNT and Elvis book available as audiobooks?
Great question. I have 2 Elvis books and an FDR book out. They're an ebook and audio book worldwide. The book I'm writing right now that I just started is Who Murdered Princess Diana. That'll be out in the spring. After that one, I'm going into Tesla. After that one, I'm wrapping up with JFK. So I do not have Tesla out yet, I'm sorry, but all of my books are available on ebook and audiobook everywhere. So if you want a physical book, I'll get you one. If you want an ebook or an audiobook, you can get it that way as well. And, it's a hell of a book, I got to tell you. I'll tell you what, I can't take credit for all of this in all reality, because there were 30 years of investigation into this death before I got involved with it. All I really did was just clean it up, make it come to a logical conclusion, and finish what was already there. How I know that Elvis Presley was hiding FBI agents and posing them as band members 2 months a year is an Elvis investigator named Maria Columbus in 1990 was at Graceland in the trophy room, and she saw on the wall that there was a letter from the federal government thanking Elvis Presley. So she snapped a picture of it, and she wrote the federal government, wanted to know what it was about. The federal government was the one who told her the story. So pretty interesting stuff. I think I finally have it nailed down, And people who read this book, you can also go to the Facebook page, Who Murdered Elvis, on Facebook. And you can also go to the Facebook page, Who Murdered FDR, on Facebook. People who have read this book, they just absolutely love it, and they're recommending it to all Elvis fans. So I think that I wrote this book with Elvis in mind, because I think he's been exploited enough, and I think Elvis would like the truth out. So, as an Elvis fan to other Elvis fans, it's time for the truth. I always say the truth might hurt, but it should never be hidden. And
Definitely.
I write to ensure that it never will be.
Yeah, and stuff like that should put the spirit to rest, because they are trying to share a message and get a point across, and putting the truth out there should be able to help the spirit rest. And Shar was saying that Elvis always felt his blessings were because he lived for Jesse. And then Dell was also saying, what you are saying is really true. Elvis caused 2 revolutions, black music into mainstream and age-differentiated music. He wasn't consciously a revolutionary, but he shook up everything and basically changed the world of music for all of us.
He changed the world. I mean, he changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
He made it possible for kids to have their own music, and when they had identities, pardon me, then, businesses could market the kids. That never happened before. It's just someone had to change the world. And that's why I say I'm I'm kind of a pariah in the eyes of Graceland and Elvis Presley Enterprises. They really don't like me saying the story that I'm saying, because I think they're making too much money off the other end. They're keeping this Elvis is Alive story going, pardon me, and I wish they wouldn't. Matter of fact, if you go to the Graceland's website, there's a thing on there of Elvis sightings. There's big money in this, and I'm not in on it. I've got so much time and so much treasure in this book. I'll never make money on this. I'm just doing it because I want it to be told. I think it's time for the truth to be told. Same thing with FDR. We've been talking all this time. We haven't talked about FDR at all, have we?
We haven't, and actually a few people are like, I want to hear about the Tesla thing, but I'm definitely willing to listen to the FDR version, because, that's a big point for you, and I think you've uncovered some things that you'd like to share to, share the knowledge. And let's see, Shar was also saying he wouldn't go into Vegas show unless they let his black singers come in the front door too. Major for civil rights.
Oh, yeah. Elvis was, you want to do another show on FDR? You want me to finish up with Elvis on this one? How much time do we have?
Oh, well, if you want to, you can do FDR or Tesla, whichever you'd like. We've had a few people saying they want to hear about the Tesla, like who killed Tesla, because it is a big question in our mind. But I think, like, in the back of my mind, I basically know who did it. But, I mean, it's up to you. You're the writer, and if you have some poignant information or whatever that you'd like to share, I mean, I'm all for it.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to go into Tesla right now. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance.
No worries.
And the reason is the book is not written yet. And like they say, a magician never gives away his tricks. I can't put it out there yet. I'm sorry. If you want to follow my author's page on Facebook, just type in book series. The book series Facebook page. I'm trying to get Facebook to cooperate with me and do it under my, who murdered, whatever. And because of the name murder in Facebook, in today's world, they're giving me a hell of a time doing it. So I just went under book series because the blockheads over it. So, go to Facebook, type in book series, and you'll see my book series come up, and follow me there. And I'll give you updates as to when things are going to be published and all kinds of good things. So, not going to go into Tesla today, but I will at some point. I apologize. Who murdered FDR? The parallels to modern day. We have 75 years later, almost 75 years later, we have a president in the White House who's being accused of having Russians all over the place in the White House and tampering with elections. FDR died mysteriously in the presence of 2 Russian spies. His painter, Elizabeth Shumatov, her maiden name was Ivanov. Her father was a high-ranking official in the Russian government, and her photographer that traveled with her he was also a Russian, who was a defected Russian, who his naturalization papers say his name is Nicholas Krupikensky, who changed his name to Cobbins, who changed his name further from Cobbins to Robbins. These are the 2 people who were with FDR when he died. And he died very mysteriously. If you look at FDR between the 2 conferences, the Turin Conference in 1943 and the Yalta Conference in 1945, there were 7 months. Excuse me. There was the months in between there. There were several months in between, and you can actually see. And again, this is all the pictures are in my book, just like the Elvis book. I have to back up what I say, or I'll get eggs thrown at me. You can actually see this person deteriorate from one conference to the next. FDR was being slowly poisoned. Every time he went to Warm Springs, Georgia, he started to get healthy. Every time he went back to the White House, he started to get sick. He started to get sick at meal times. His blood pressure started to bipolar bounce from normal to 310/198 and back. His body was not responding to any sort of medicine that they were giving him. He had a bunch of doctors, actually. Dr. Ross McIntyre, who was the White House physician, he was also a vice admiral, the Surgeon General of the Navy. Dr. Howard Bruin was lieutenant commander in the Navy, and he was a cardiologist. Dr. James Pollan, who was a physician, he also consulted with. He was in Atlanta, so when he was in Warm Springs, he was in the mix as well. And no one could figure out what was wrong with this guy. So they take him from the confines of his medical situation to the doctor of the day, Dr. Frank Leahy, world-renowned surgeon, medical administrator, and teacher. He actually started the Leahy Clinic, which still is in existence in Boston. Started in 1923. He examined FDR. And every now and then you get lucky, and I got lucky when I wrote this book. In 2011, it was released through the History Channel, the litany of problems, medical problems that were going on with FDR. None of them aligned with the advance of polio. The advance of polio, and I'm going to bore people for a second. I got this from healthline.com, and I also consulted 3 private doctors who begged me not to be named because of the name Roosevelt. Muscle and joint weakness, increasing muscular pain, fatigue, muscle atrophy, trouble breathing, sleep apnea, and becoming cold to the touch. This is the advance of polio. What Dr. Leahy released is not this list. Should I read all this? Yeah, why not? He had cardiovascular problems. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. He had cardiovascular problems. He was having intellectual and mental problems. He had problems focusing. He was calling things by the wrong name. He had sensory motor problems. He had gastrointestinal problems. His nervous system was a wreck. He had skeletal problems. He had kidney damage. There was all kinds of problems going on with FDR. This is not the advance of polio. It's the advance of poisoning. So I was looking at Daisy Suckley, one of his favorite cousins, published her diary called Closest Companion. And on page 203 of this book, she's writing her notes of a discussion she had with FDR's doctor, Dr. McIntyre. And I'll read you the quote. She doesn't like to use president, so she says it's the peace fourth day in bed, and he still feels somewhat miserable while his fever is gone. Last Tuesday, without any warning, he felt ill at noon, also known as lunchtime. I lost my spot. He lay in his study and sofa until 4 p.m. when he found he had a temperature of 102. Listen to this. Dr. McIntyre said it was a toxic poisoning, but he couldn't ascribe anything to it. So here we have his doctor knowing that he's being poisoned. And all they're doing is administering sulfa drugs. So you say, well, that's really far-fetched. No, that's, to have something happen like this, to the president is really far-fetched. But you have to think about the time period. There are all kinds of attempts on these leaders' lives in World War II. Hitler had 42 attempts on his life from 1930 to 1944. Erwin Rommel, actually, the Desert Fox, his Heidrich general, tried to take Hitler out with a coup, and it was uncovered. He was taken from his home and forced to take cyanide. Hitler planned Operation Long Jump to assassinate Churchill, FDR, and Stalin at the Tehran conference. They went back and forth. Churchill had survived dozens of attempts on his life by luck and intervention from MI5. One of them, and this is right out of Maxwell Smart, they tried to kill Winston Churchill, my eighth cousin? Like I knew the guy, They tried to kill Winston Churchill with an exploding chocolate bar.
What?
You can't make this up.
Fact is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Well, that's why Maxwell Smart. The Nazi spies were so deep, and we all spy on each other. I mean, come on, America has spies too. I mean, come on, let's not be negative. The Nazi spies were so deep in and around Churchill, they realized that he liked his fancy chocolate. So they made a bomb out of that looked like a chocolate bar. It was layered in thick, rich chocolate with a golden wrapper, and it was the name on it was Peter's Chocolate. And he was supposed to go to Winston Churchill. He was supposed to unwrap it, and he was supposed to blow his head off. So, fortunately, they were a little faster, and they got it before Churchill got it. And there's a document that's in this book, Who Murdered FDR. Again, I don't just write about Elvis. and it's in my book, and you can see the actual top secret document of the event. So they did all kinds of things to knock each other off. Stalin murdered half his country in the Great Purge. I mean, this is certainly not as far-fetched as you might think. When the history of poisoning is incredible. We started poisoning and trying to knock off opposition leaders with poisoning all the way back to Rasputin and the Apostle John in the Bible. So this is long since been in play. At the Tehran conference, during a steak dinner, FDR turned green and he started to shake so bad and throw up, they had to actually physically remove him from the room. On the way back from the Tehran conference, one of his admirals in the Navy died of a cerebral hemorrhage. All of a sudden, everyone around him is starting to die of a cerebral hemorrhage. His personal secretary in the White House died of a cerebral hemorrhage. You know, the drug of the day was warfarin, rat poison, colorless, odorless, tasteless. So here we have, there's a mole in the White House who's poisoning people and killing people. And as we found out, as history taught us, there were communists all over his White House. As a matter of fact, FDR aligned himself with communists. I went to the Roosevelt Mansion in the National Archives, and there's a 3-drawer filing cabinet of Eleanor Roosevelt and her connection to communism. And there's about equal that with FDR and his connection to Stalin and communism. They love the ideology. Why? They weren't evil people, obviously. But back then, you have to realize the time period. I mean, they didn't know anything about evil empires or anything like this. Stalin was sending invitations to union leaders through the CPUSA, the Communist Party of the United States of America, in New York City, which is still in existence, by the way. He was sending invitations to come over to Russia and see this great new ideology where everyone is cared for. There's no pitfalls of capitalism. It's a cradle-to-grave society. We handle everything. People live in peace and harmony. So they took these people, and some people from Hollywood as well, over there, showed them a fake town, which didn't exist, made of cardboard.
Nice.
And sent them, oh yeah, it's true. Sent them back with packets and information how they could transform America into this new great ideology. You have to remember, this was long before the Cold War. So you fast forward to the White House, everyone from Harry Dexter White to Alger Hiss, and all points in between, are communists in and around FDR's White House. They're in the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. They're in the Attorney General's office. They're in the Department of State. They're in the Labor Relations Board. They're in the Labor Advisory Board, the War Production Board, the U.S. Treasury. We have communists back then in the U.S. Treasury Department. You know? So it parallels very interestingly to modern day, where they're accusing Trump of having been infiltrated by the Russians in the White House. You know, it's very bizarre that history is repeating itself. As a matter of fact, FDR obviously is having problems traveling over to see Stalin because of his situation with his legs and the hardware he had to have on his legs. And I'm not much of a socialist, but I tell you what, when I read how this guy struggled, you know, I really, my respect level for FDR really went through the roof. Anyway, he had this guy named Harry Hopkins, who was his closest ally, who penned the New Deal for FDR, who came out of the CPUSA, who was friends with Eleanor, who was also involved in the CPUSA. Harry Hopkins gets pulled in as one of his top advisors, he being FDR. FDR is sending him to go off to meet with Stalin. And not very long before Harry Hopkins is identified as a communist spy. As a matter of fact, is a KBG defector. His name is Oleg, and I'm going to butcher this last name. As a matter of fact, I'm not even going to attempt it.
Yeah,
Oleg something
I butchered
Steve
enough in the intro.
He identified Harry Hopkins as a mysterious Agent 19 who was contacting the Soviet Union with the Venona Project and the Manhattan Project. So all of this information is being leaked out of FDR's White House. So FDR, they're not killing him fast with a cerebral hemorrhage. They're killing him slow because they want it to look like an accident. And they're timing it towards the end of the war. Stalin got him. Stalin, FDR wanted, the end of the war for FDR was to look totally different from what Stalin wanted. The FDR proposed the four policemen of the world: the United States, Great Britain, China, and the Soviet Union. They were all to police their little quadrant of the world, so this great war never happened again. FDR didn't want to share the world with, Stalin didn't want to share the world with FDR. Stalin wanted to rule the world. He looked at the ally, being our ally, as temporary. The entire time he had his eye in the post-war world. He gobbled into China, and of course the Cold War happened, and the rest is history. So here we have Stalin, who is probably one of the most raving megalomaniacs I think I have ever read or heard of. Even worse than Colonel Tom Parker, mind you. And he wanted to deal much more with Harry Truman. Harry Truman wasn't that experienced. He wasn't a good negotiator. Stalin knew that FDR was shrewd, and he had to get him out of the way. Stalin thought that he could just blow right over Truman. The two hated each other. So they were systematically poisoning FDR from within the White House with a poison that Europe knew was poisonous, that America didn't know yet. This wasn't banned until in 1922. It was banned actually in the other overseas and in Russia. They knew about it. Stalin poisoned both of his wives. This guy knows what he's doing when it comes to poisoning. So Stalin is the one that got him. He got him through the connection to the Russians. I'm not going to spoil the book for you, but I will certainly name Motive, Means, and Opportunity, and I'll tell you exactly how it went down. All of my books follow the same theme. They're all 6 chapters. The first 3 chapters are basically the beginning of the person, how they rose to power, and where they are. Chapter 3, I start poking holes in what we've been told. 4, 5, and 6 is the murder mystery, and I solve it. So if you're looking for something, like I told you, if you have people on your Christmas list who like to read, they're not going to be disappointed with the books. So the FDR book, I've heard it both ways. Some people think the FDR book is actually better written and it's a better book than the Elvis book. I don't know. There's no accounting for taste, but I do know that the spies in and around FDR's White House were just incredible. You have to realize it's the era of the Waltons. They don't know he's being poisoned. They're baffled. So, again, the Secret Service in the era of the Waltons, they're not even going to try and check into the background of the portrait painter and the photographer who is with FDR when he dies. So if that wasn't enough, rumors swirl. It was like, it was 50 hours from death to grave. They couldn't get this guy in the grave fast enough. So Eleanor is hearing rumors that her husband's been murdered, and the rumors are swirling around Washington, and she's fed up with it. So in 1957, she commissions a private investigator to get his medical files and look into FDR's death. Well, he got the runaround, and they finally had to come clean and tell him that FDR's medical records were stolen from a locked file at Bethesda.
Well, it's
so
interesting.
You have to ask yourself.
Oh, go ahead.
You have to ask yourself a couple questions. If it was a natural death, why did the files disappear?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's really telling. It's really telling when you have to steal medical records to cover something up. It's really telling. Now, today this could never happen because all of the presidents have, Hitler used food tasters. They would have, he would grab Jews and they would do nothing but taste food for them. So I just read an article here, it was a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago. Hitler's last and oldest food taster is still alive. And it's a woman and her name escapes me. Well, she's a Jewish lady. And they used everything from dogs and monkeys to prisoners back then in the day to food taste and do things because poisonings were everywhere. Roman Emperor Claudius, Napoleon, Mark Antony, King Henry VIII, Lincoln, they all used food testers. In today's world, there's a food safety team for the president and his family and some of the high dignitaries. And they are charged with the responsibility of being supervised to make the president's food. Don't send cupcakes to the president. He's not getting them. Okay? And the presidential food safety team, their job is to set up a secure zone for the first family to eat without complication. And when they go outside of the White House, like I believe right now the president's in France or somewhere over there, they do food tasters and other things.
Well, I hate to cut you off again, but we got to go to our second break. So you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for a night on the town? The Moose Vancouver is the bar that never stops rocking until 2 a.m. every night. The Moose has great food with everything on the menu from $6.95 to $8.95. Fantastic, vibrant staff and rock and roll that will bring you back to when the music was real, the hair was long, and the guitars were rockin'. Get your party on at the Moose Vancouver, the official party bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Get your horns up with me on Spaced Out Radio. This is Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Come tune in to SOR where you can hear me rock out with Little Brother is Watching, the official theme song of Spaced Out Radio. And then come on over to bumblefoot.com where you can find out about my tour schedule, my music, and everything else. Bumblefoot.com keeps you up to date on what I'm doing and the best way to stay in touch with my music and music camps. Sign up for my newsletter at bumblefoot.com and remember, Little Brother is Watching.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Hi there, this is Geraldine Orozco from San Francisco's Bay Area Meditation. I invite you to join me the first Tuesday of every month with Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's The Spiritual You. In this fast-paced world we live in, it's time for you to take some time for you. We'll cover every possible subject from powerful meditation to healing techniques to your own intuition and spirituality. So come join us for The Spiritual You.
The freedom to post what you want, when you want. That's the social media freedom you need. Social Media Freedom is the free app in your app store. No need to worry about going to jail or being shadow banned any longer. It's the freedom to say what you feel. The freedom to know Big Brother isn't watching. It's the way social media is supposed to be. Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free. Download from your app store today.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We are getting ready to relaunch the SOR Space Travelers Club at spacedoutradio.com. For $5 a month, you can join us for a plethora of features found nowhere else. Hang out in a private chat room during the show and after party. You can check out some exclusive content and a store specifically for you, as well as a private listener forum where you can post your thoughts, stories, and pictures. The SOR Space Travelers Club, coming soon to spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Sit back, relax, grab a drink, and listen closely. Spaced Out Radio continues through the weekend. From the mile-high mountains of Colorado to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Weekend with Tessa Nicole Thomas.
Hey guys, welcome back, and it's so great to have you guys tonight listening. Tonight we have Stephen Ubaney. Stephen, welcome back. It's been so awesome having you and hearing what you've learned, through your own investigation and others.
Well, thanks for having me and tolerating my dementia.
No worry. I have all the timers, so I think we can relate.
Yeah, you really have to, when you do work like this, you really have to, you really have to have a passion for the truth. And boy, I've taken my lumps. And it's tough because you're messing with people's normalcy bias.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's really something. And I mean, people like to live in their self-made purgatory, and they love to stay there. It's comfortable for them. And when you run across a knucklehead like me who takes them out of that normalcy bias, you know, they don't like it. You know, they don't like it at all. But I think Who Murdered Elvis, there's 45 factual sources and government documents in the first one, and I think FDR is pretty close. And this is why these books take so long to write, you know. And somebody asked me that the other day on another show, and they said, you know, what's taking so long to get these books out? And I said, you know, look everything I say I have to back up. You know, if I was writing about unicorns and rainbows, these books would be flying off the shelf.
Right.
I'm not that type of writer. I just can't imagine it and put it down and get it out, you know. So you really have to have an affection for the truth.
For sure. And a point that I was about to ask, like, can you believe that schools are actually taking history out of school these days? Like, how are the kids able to learn not to repeat history unless they know it, and you're taking it out of school? Like, what is the point of that? What is this shenanigans and craziness going on?
Well, how long is this show? 'Cause I can go off on that one for several hours.
We might have to take an hour in overtime. Rano said so. I got permission from Rano. Because I can't believe it, but at the same time, the way everything's going, I'm just like, yep, another course for the par. Like, this is what's happening. And, you know, they're basically dumbing us down, and taking history out is another way of dumbing us down. And it just really blows my mind.
Well, you know what? It's not surprising, because they're tearing down all the statues in the country. They're actually erasing history. You know, there's good history and there's bad history, but there's even lessons that can be learned from bad history. History is history. You have to leave it there and learn from it. You know, when Germany rebuilt after World War II, so I'm told, I've never been to Germany, I'm told that they left right in the middle of, I think it was Hamburg, Germany, they left the whole city block bombed out as a reminder of what that was. And they're doing this on purpose. They're dumbing us down. There is a divide and conquer strategy to,
and it's working quite
America.
well. Yeah.
You know, actually, it's fracture and conquer, but you know, I don't know how well it's working, really. I mean, you think about it. You hear about it on the network news, but I mean, there was like 1,000 people rioted. Big deal. There's 1,000 people. There's 330 million people in the country. There's 1,000 people rioting, you know. I mean,
well, and they don't
you know,
cover everything, and there's not a time in history that I can think of where we were more divided other than Vietnam. I mean, the way this country is divided today, it really scares me, and it really saddens me. And, you know, if you say something, people they feel like you're attacking them personally when you're not. You know, You're making comment about somebody else or something else, and they're feeling personally attacked. No, I'm not saying anything about you. I'm just voicing my opinion. But then I'm a libtard, and I'm all these other things that I'm really not. I'm just, you know, I'm a Marine, and, you know, I have amazing common sense, and common sense isn't something that grows in everybody's garden. And I'm seeing all these things happening, and I'm just seeing them tearing us down to a point where what are they actually working towards? It's just, it scares me.
Well, they're very rapidly working towards a one world government, and we're way off the subject of my books, and this is why I don't write about politics. But everything that really matters to life is being reduced in choice. And I know George Carlin talked about this at length, and it wasn't, you know, towards the end of his life, he didn't give a damn. He was just saying what he was saying, you know. And there used to be hundreds of communication companies. Now there's like, what, 6? You know, everything that matters in life is being reduced in choice. Look at what Monsanto's doing to your food. They're buying up all your food. You know, they want to control your food. There used to be dozens of oil companies. Now there's 5. Everything that is being really matter to your life is being reduced in choice. The fact of the matter is you have no choice. The only choice you really have is you go down to Baskin Robbins, and I think you have 43 different flavors. But, I mean, there's no real choice.
I want to live there. I'm just kidding.
What's that?
I said I want to live there.
Yeah, right. You know, in 1996, Bill Clinton signed the Telecommunications Act, which deregulated media, which made it possible for all of the big guys to buy up all of the little guys. So now you have 5 or 6 CEOs who control everything that you see and hear and feel and think on a daily basis. So it doesn't surprise me at all to see that they're not teaching history anymore. We don't want a society of people capable of critical thinking. It doesn't suit anybody's interest up top. You know, if truth was suddenly introduced into American society, the whole system would freaking collapse.
Right?
Kidding me?
Well, they've been teaching us falsehoods for so long. Like, there's so many things that are wrong with what they've taught us. And if you read on your own, you find out all these other things that have really happened. And you're like, wow. Like, I spent all these hours in school to hear the BS-ery of what they want me to know, which isn't the truth. Yeah. But, yeah. And, you know, they divide us to conquer us to make us do something else. And it really is working in their favor.
You know, one of my friends mentioned this the other day, and I would have problems disagreeing with him. He was saying, have you ever noticed the parallel between the fires in California and every time that Korea gets pissed at us?
Right?
And I never put it together.
I didn't either till you just mentioned it, and it really it really makes sense.
If you look at the timeline, you know, you'll see, even the pictures don't make sense. You'll see a picture of a car that's scorched to the ground and melted. You know how much temperature it takes to melt the freaking car? But next to it, you'll see a house that's not burned. What the hell's going on? I don't know. But let's go back to talking about FDR, please, before I get killed.
I know. Talking about politics is very dangerous ground. Politics and religion. Let's veer away from that.
You know, that thinking thing is real tough to stop once you start. And I invented something that I think I invented, at least I think I did. It's called the 5 times rule. I ask a question, and I get the answer, and then I ask why. And I get the answer, and then I ask why. And I do it 5 times. And if you do that 5 times, you get right down to the bottom of just about any situation. So this is what I try and do in life. And I don't believe anything the government tells me.
Me neither.
I just, I'm a poor American, even though my lineage signed the Declaration. No, I'm a poor American because I like to form my own opinions, and I don't roll over on command. I like to form my own opinions. So it's a natural thing for me to write books like this and come around and tap people on the shoulder and say, hey. I will tell everybody this, that after I'm done with this 6-book series, I have people interested in making it a television show. So I could do each book a television series, or for Netflix.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'm actually I'm in negotiations with a production company right now, and I don't know if it's going to work out. So if anybody out there in the big wide world has any of those connections to a production company, please get a hold of me, and we will go from there. I would be eternally grateful. And after that, after I get these things done, and I plan on writing other books, and I'm going to poke the bear a little more in other directions. But I don't foresee me getting political. As a matter of fact, my book agent, I share a book agent with Roger Stone.
Nice.
Speaking of getting political. I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. And they're trying to. It's funny. I know people who actually have Donald Trump's cell phone number. How funny! It's weird. I mean, Roger Stone and Donald Trump are like, attached to the hip. It's weird. I mean, I have access to this person, kind of, and he's going to be on. He interviews people. He's the host on InfoWars on the weekends, and I hear they're trying to book an interview with me and Roger Stone for InfoWars, who are coming up here, I think, on the 17th. I'm going to Dallas next weekend for the JFK conference down there.
Are you gonna go check out like the clock tower and everything, and see if you can get in there and see what the perspective is from there? Because I don't think Oswald was the main shooter. I think he was just a pawn, and there were other ones, and the evidence shows such. And then you go into the Mandela effect, where not only has the shooters changed, but the car has changed. And you're mentioning that earlier, like the car that they have in this museum isn't the same as the car that was actually there.
Not even remotely close. There were two of those cars made, one for the vice president, one for the president. And you know what? I'm not going to get into that. I'll save that for the book. Sorry. But I will say this. I know someone who was a nurse in Parkland when that happened. She was charged with the responsibility of saving John Connolly's life and recouping him back to health. And she told me that John Connolly was shot through the back. As they said, he was also shot through the front. And I said, can I quote you on that? And she said, I wish you wouldn't, because I don't want to be goofballing the world calling me. I said, well, I can certainly relate to that. But she said John Connolly was also shot from the front.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also see that there is, if you look right, if you look at it just right, you can see there were holes in the front of that one, in the windshield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as usual, the government doesn't share everything with us, and they cover up so many things, especially when I believe they were behind this assassination because they didn't agree with what JFK had in mind. Like, I wish he would have had his way. I wish he could have attained what he was shooting for, but instead they shot him down, and he wasn't able to do what he wanted to. And of course, there's all these marital affairs and all these other things that go along with it, because that's what happens when you're male or female and you have all this at the fingertips. But yeah, it's a really sad story either way. And then, this whole, like I'm saying, Mandela effect happens, and, this guy has National Geographic or some other magazine at his mother-in-law's house. His wife looks at it, and it's the regular-looking limousine. And she tells him what she's seeing before she takes the magazine over to him. And then they get it over there, and then they open it up, and it's a totally different car. Like, the limousine is not a front and back seater, it's a front, middle, and back seater. And so it was really strange, and there was not this many people, but another, amount of people. And then they're trying to say Jackie O was a part of the assassination. Like, I'm just like, what the crack is going on? Like, you guys are losing your ever-loving minds. And there's so many strange things that are happening in the world today, and it makes me wonder if it's because of CERN and messing with the God particle and trying to make these small collisions encased in this metallic, tube or whatnot. Like, you cannot encase something like that. Like, it's universal, whatever you're trying to do. And I have seen so many changes due to it. But at the same time, I could just be, losing my mind due to all the timers. But at the same time, I'm seeing these little small things that are just adding up to something is changing. And, there's a mass amount of people that see the same thing, but there's other people that don't. And me and my husband, I was talking about, Luke, I am your father. And he's like, no, it's, this. And I was like, okay, other dimensional Vern, whatever you say. Like, so many weird things are happening. And do you see anything like that, or do you put any weight into that?
That's a tough. I'd be careful what I say here. I think I'm going to use football terms and punt on this one.
Nice.
Because I got to be real careful what I say, especially with so many people listening.
Well, I know, and people can, be prejudiced to what you say and decide not to buy your book, so I understand where you're coming from. But we also talked about... go ahead.
I always tell people that, I've been lucky. I don't have problems with people who hate me or anything like that. And I think that's because I respect my readers and they respect me back. I refuse to say that I have fans. I'm not that arrogant. But I love my readers. They love me back. And, I don't want to stray off the things that I write about. I'll just as soon let them keep their gray matter in their own head,
Right.
But as far as the JFK thing is concerned, I'll tell you what. Rush to Judgment, Mark Lane, 1964. Are you familiar with this book at all?
No, I haven't read it. I've heard of it, but I haven't read it. There's so many books I want to read, and it's really hard with a house load of kids and working graveyard shift and such. But yeah, there's so many things I want to read, so I gotta put that note down for that book.
Mark Lane was a very high-profile attorney in Charlottesville, Virginia. He was the attorney for, oh boy, I'm not even going to bother. Look him up. He's huge. He was the last person that he was really a big celebrity that he was an attorney for was Jim Jones in Guyana. He was best friends with John Kennedy. He ran for president when John Kennedy ran for president. Obviously, that he lost, threw in the towel, and backed Kennedy all the way. Became real good friends with Bobby Kennedy. Mark Lane is the one who systematically poked holes in everything the Warren Commission said.
Nice.
And it was the first book to do this. So we have Mark Lane, who we lost in 2017 now, 2016, to thank for all the information that we know now. And he said it best. According to the legal definition of conspiracy, we have a conspiracy in our hands. Two people joined together to perform an act that may or may not be determined to be, something in the future. So according to the legal definition, in our own federal government, with a church investigation, and this goes back to Elvis Presley again. Interesting segue. The church hearings in the House Senate Committee on Assassination that started in 1976. Mark Lane started it to reinvestigate the death of Martin Luther King and primarily John F. Kennedy. Interesting tie-in back to Elvis Presley, because Elvis was into everything. It's interesting, before anyone did anything, Elvis Presley did everything. He was obsessed with the Kennedy assassination, and he would watch it for hours upon hours upon hours because he was a gun guy, okay? He never thought that Oswald did it. He knew there was a conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to fund an investigation with William Sullivan, who was second in charge of the FBI behind J. Edgar. And the House Senate Committee on Assassination starts. By the time they end their investigation in 1977, both William Sullivan and Elvis Presley are both dead. Everything is interwound with everything. So, like I said, by the time 77 rolled around, there were more people who wanted Elvis dead than alive. And he was really involved in a lot of things. He systematically, I don't know how he pissed off so many people. I mean, it's incredible, really. But,
well, they were probably hoping for, a Justin Bieber of their time, somebody that has the pretty boy looks, but really no brains, who they can control and puppet master and whatnot, but he was intelligent, and he educated himself, and he read everything he could And they didn't appreciate that. They didn't like that.
Yeah.
But while on that note... Oh, go ahead.
We don't want a society of people capable of critical thinking, do we? We can't have that, you know?
Oh, heck no. That would go against everything they believe. But if you guys want to call in with any questions or any comments to Stephen, you can call us at 970-335-9596. That's 970-335-9596. And I meant to get to that right after the commercial break, but, you know, we were kind of delved into this other stuff. So yeah, all that stuff is interesting, and the JFK thing, like, I didn't believe it either, because you watch it and you can see the different directions of basically splatter. Like, it's not coming just from behind, it's coming from other places. And, you know, you see the guy on the, you know, grassy knoll or whatever, opening his umbrella. That could have been a trigger for somebody to shoot, but supposedly he's saying it was just his message to Kennedy about rainy days ahead or whatnot. There's so many different crazy things that were happening all around where they were driving. It's hard to pin down one person or three, basically.
Well, there's a couple things about that. Wait, what do I want to say and what don't I want to say? What do I want to hold back from my book? One of the most fascinating people that I met is a fellow. The name of his book is Through a Window with a High-Powered Rifle, and the man's name is Don Adams. He also died last year. We're losing all of these people, from the Memphis Mafia to Mark Lane to Dan Warlick. They've lived out their full lives, and now we're losing them. It's just that time period. So fortunately, there's goofballs like me who have met these people and have this information and all of the material that I can continue to carry this on. Don Adams was special agent in charge in Dallas, standing in front of the school book depository when the shots were fired. Runs in the building, goes on the 4th floor, runs by a guy in the cafeteria drinking a Coke. Says, "Did you hear that?" The guy said, "Yeah." "Where'd it come from?" The guy pointed. That guy was Lee Harvey Oswald. It would have been impossible for Lee Harvey Oswald to get on the opposite side of the building, go down 2 floors, through 3 walls, and be drinking a Coke seconds after that happened.
Yeah.
So what Don Adams was charged with the responsibility of doing was taking pictures of all of the bullet holes, filing them away, getting all the testimony from all of his agents who were all over the place, and passing it up the line to the superiors. What he did was that, of course, but he also took his own set of photocopies of all of the pictures. So he writes Through the Window with a High-Powered Rifle. It's the name of the book. And because he knows Lee Harvey Oswald didn't do anything. Complete patsy, complete setup. So he's writing this book and he goes to the National Archives. While at the National Archives, he's not finding the information that he filed. It's gone. He counted 11 bullet holes. So Kennedy was in the middle of a shooting gallery. There was actually a guy who got shot on the opposite side of the limousine. He got shot in the cheek with a bullet fragment. Went to the Dallas police. There was no incident report filed on it. The man's name escapes me. The spot in the curb where the bullet hit, the government dug it up, poured a new curb. It was lost.
Mm-hmm.
It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Don Adams died here. This was 2018. He died last year. and his son's name is Mark, and he's a lieutenant in the Fair Lawn Police in Ohio. I called the man because I was trying to get a hold of his father, and he broke the news that his father had recently passed. And I said, look, I know your father was in the FBI, and I know he investigated this. Surely he has to have files to pass down. He said, well, it's a funny thing about that. About 2 weeks after my father's death, they had a mysterious fire in the house. Everything's gone. So take from that what you want. All of the people who were there, shot one, day one, are having issues. I'm a generation or two removed, so nobody's going to waste their time on me. I'm just a guy who writes about, I reinvestigate history, I don't really consider myself to be a conspiracy guy, to be honest with you. I'm fascinated by history, and when a major event like when Elvis Presley died, when that happens, everybody's looking for information and no one can find it. But as decades pass, like with FDR, you have deathbed confessions, you have diaries published, you have the release of documents, people start to talk, you can reconstruct history and actually debunk what we were told. So that's what trips my trigger. I'm not really into I don't care if the earth is flat or round. I don't care, okay? All I care is that I'm on it. All right, that's it. I'm good with that,
All right.
Bigfoot's cool. I don't really, Bigfoot interests me for about 15, 20 minutes. Yeah, it's cool. Okay, I'm going to go back to my history stuff,
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with people who are fascinated by that stuff. Good for them. Everybody's different,
Well, it interests me as well, and especially when I see that the Washington and Oregon State Atlas, which is paid for by the federal and state government, has Sasquatch under S in their atlas, and they actually have spots where they were sighted, and also it used to be, oh my goodness, I can't think of the word right now, a felony, but then they made it the highest level of the next degree of crime. At first it was a felony, and then it went down to the lower level. So that's interesting because they're using not only state but federal money and time to fund this book, and so it's in there, which is another mystery and a whole nother realm of things that we can talk about. But yeah, dealing with real life things that really encompass us, and things that we should be paying attention to, and things that our government is doing, is really kind of more important. Like, leave these guys alone. They're hiding out. They're doing what they've done for centuries and centuries. Let's deal with what mankind is doing, and let's, encompass the good and the bad. You can't just have the good in history. You have to have the bad too, because you have to learn from it.
Well, it's exactly what you were saying before, and you're absolutely right. We have to learn from what we've done. We have to know these things, and it's being erased. It's a shame because, what do I want to say on the air here? People have been, not all, some people of an age group have been dumbed down to the point where I'm surprised they're potty trained. It's incredible, really. And I know I use that word a lot, incredible. I have to come up with another word, but there's nothing else that fits. They can't function. They can't grow up. They can't function. Like I said, they're not second level thinkers. They roll over on command. It's something else, really. I never thought that I would see this, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's really something else when you see. They're just, the dumbing down of America is. There was a study done. I don't know if you heard about this or not. It was the 1960 high school graduating class versus the 2016 college graduating class. Did you hear of this study?
I haven't.
Scholastically, the high school graduating class of 1960 destroyed them. That's how far we've been dumbed down. In 1960, the high school graduating senior, the average score, obviously computer simulated of what they knew, destroyed college graduates in 2016. Now, I don't know if this is being done maliciously. Sometimes I think the government keeps things from us for our own good. Sometimes I think it's not for our own good.
We're surrounded by, and I hate to say it, a bunch of sheeple. Like, there's people that see, listen to, and believe everything that they have been told or that they see on TV. And then there's those of us that are basically the black sheep that are looking at, the inner details and all the things that go along with it, and, building our own ideals of what's going on instead of adopting others that we're seeing on TV or hearing or reading or whatnot, and the government is very, I would say, dirty. Like, I always swore that I'd never join the military, but I did for certain reasons. And I learned why I said I'd never do it, deeper than I already realized. They're so dirty, and even when the ish falls from the sky or the ish is about to hit the fan, they're not going to let us civilians know. Only the citizens will know. Only the citizens will be protected. The rest of us will just go up in smoke, and we'll never know what's about to hit us until it actually does, like until we see it coming in, which we might not, because we're all looking at our cell phones or the TV or the computer. It's just crazy, ridiculous, and kind of scary.
The ultimate distraction. And, FDR did the same thing. We had already broken the Japanese code. The reason why FDR was so good at war, and this segues right back into FDR because of Pearl Harbor, the reason why FDR was such a great war president, even though I'm not much of a socialist, I didn't care for anything else that he did, but he believed in a cradle-to-grave society where the government, took care of you, and it was a nice idea, but it worked. He was such a great war president because he was very shrewd, first of all. Very smart man. He knew that the New Deal had only worked so far. He helped a lot of people with the New Deal. He tried to get a second New Deal through, a new round of legislation for the government to, basically, it was just the New Deal Part 2. More of the same, okay? And everyone is going to be working off the taxpayer, government funded everything. So he couldn't get that to go through. So we tried to pack the court because they were ruling that it was unconstitutional. Portions of it were unconstitutional. So when he couldn't do that successfully, he knew he had to get in the war quick. He had been telling people, it's Europe's war, I'm not getting involved in it. He came up through Assistant Secretary of the Navy, so he was very, very aware of what was going on. He was in contact with Winston Churchill, and then coming back around to our government, not telling everything for our own good, sometimes for our own good. He knew that the Japanese were an oil donor nation. They don't make enough oil to support themselves. They have to get it from external sources. The Japanese had just exited a war with China. The last thing they wanted was to go to war with the United States. They just didn't have the resources. They had no interest in it. They tried to broker peace with the United States for 2 years. The regime toppled in Japan. New regime took over. It was a military regime. They had to go island hopping to get resources. They were no longer going to try and negotiate with FDR because FDR shut the oil spigot off to them. And they were crippling them. FDR had to pick a fight because he knew that this New Deal was not working. Look, in his defense, nobody had ever done that before, the New Deal. It was a great experiment. So, it worked well in the Soviet Union, or so he thought. so he was going to try it here. And it did help people. It did help people. I'm not going to lie, it did. It gave money and hope to a lot of people who were in a bad way. It didn't work as well as he thought. So that's what he did with the Japanese. The Germans, Germany is a food debtor nation. They don't make enough food or grow enough food to feed their people, so they have to get it from external sources. So what the Allies did is we did a food blockade. So when you see these pictures of these horribly emaciated prisoners, Hitler had to make a decision. Do I feed my soldiers or do I feed my prisoners? So a lot of this was being done, the other side of history, that we really didn't know anything about. We had already broken the Japanese codes. We knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen. He knew he had to make it happen. And this is one of the reasons why the aircraft carriers actually left Pearl Harbor. They were ordered out shortly before that happened. He knew that the Japanese codes had long been broken. They knew what was going on. They had to get into the war quick because our spies in Germany were telling them, FDR, they're finishing their heavy water experiments, and with these V-2 rockets, they're going to carry these nuclear weapons to the entire world. He had to get into the war fast. So he had to make a gut-wrenching decision. And this speaks right back to what you were saying about them not telling us the truth. He had to sacrifice some people at Pearl Harbor. And it's a gut-wrenching thing. But if he didn't do that, millions and millions and millions of people would have died. And I covered that in my book. And I actually, the History Channel came out after I wrote my book and said the same thing. They actually found documents stating that FDR knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen. So there are times when they don't tell us the truth for our good, and there are times they don't tell us the truth to our detriment. The IRS, for example. The IRS, the word they use for the American people, the population, is inventory.
Mm-hmm.
We're their inventory.
I
and
believe
that's how
it.
they look. That's exactly how they look at us. I mean, the government, it makes sense to us. We're at opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, it doesn't really make that much sense to us. But sometimes they tell us the truth. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah, the most part they don't.
Wasn't it in the Eisenhower administration when the UFOs went right over Washington, D.C. in broad daylight in the middle of a parade?
Oh, I believe so. I mean, they still do today. I have pictures and videos from my own front yard, unintentionally capturing them, taking pictures of the sky or the moon, sunset, sunrise. I have so many of these pictures on my Facebook or whatnot, and I've accidentally caught UFOs. One of the videos I'm talking about is trying to get the solar eclipse, and I'm not looking at it, but I'm pointing my camera up towards it, and this UFO just jets by it so fast, way quicker than a plane or a jet or anything would. And it was, a little silver object. There's so many things that I've caught, and they're keeping these things from us. I do believe some of it is, military and going backwards as far as what they found and rebuilding things, but a lot of it is alien, and it just makes me wonder why they're here and what they're doing, and they do keep it from us, and it's the whole, I think, sheeple mentality. People will really lose their minds and just go ape-ish and, just start looting and, killing people and all kinds of crazy stuff. If they just keep it to themselves and do an organized thing and hide out as many people that they've been able to educate and train, that's the better for them. All us other people that are doing our own thing that haven't or aren't serving and are doing our own thing, they're just going to let us go, and then they can rebuild from the minor populace eventually. But yeah, people they can be pretty crazy sometimes.
It makes you wonder, and I think, like everybody else, I think UFOs are fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you have to wonder if with Admiral Byrd, couldn't get that off my tongue, and he went up to have an encounter with the aliens, a military encounter right after World War II, and he went up to Antarctica. I'm sure you know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know about this?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they cooperating with us, or are they working against us? This is what I haven't been able to figure out. I mean, obviously they do. There's something going on. Unless these UFOs that we're seeing are time travelers and they're us coming back to look at us for some reason. That's the only, that theory's out there too. I'm sure I'm not the only one that came up with that one. Is it plausible? I guess. Who the hell knows, But if they are indeed alien to us, and if they're living in the Earth or on the other side of the moon, or if they come into a wormhole, or, wherever they're coming from, place X they're coming from, are they working with us or against us? In the case of Admiral Byrd, certainly weren't working with him.
Mm-hmm.
They put a whooping on Admiral Byrd. So have we mended the fence since then? Real interesting. Are they the ones tampering with the world, making us all crazy? Who knows? I do know that there are kings and then there are kingmakers. And I believe that the world leaders that we see are kingmakers. I don't think they're the kings. The kings haven't been revealed.
Yeah,
whoever
they're just
they may be.
paving the way, basically.
Bush, Trump, Obama, these are kingmakers. As a matter of fact, John Trump, President Trump's uncle, was one of the people who was involved in the searching for the word here. It's getting late here. I'm on the East Coast.
I know. I appreciate you hanging in there. I was like, are you sure this is okay? It's pretty late over there.
Yeah, I know. The coast-to-coast thing was 5:30 in the morning. I was about cross-eyed by that time I got out.
Yeah, holy shnikes. I'm just going to bed about 3 or 4 in the morning, so...
Jeez. But anyway, John Trump was one of the people who was involved with Nikola Tesla. And his stuff that they the governmental stuff that they confiscated afterwards. This is how far entrenched the Trump family is in the government. John Trump was one of the people who went through his stuff and decided what they were going to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how deep everything goes. And I think that you have kings and kingmakers. I'll put it that way. And, hey, if these extraterrestrials are here and they're here to help us, great. If they're here and they're not here to help us, well, then that will explain a great many things, Who knows? They could be doing everything to us. Maybe they're melting the cars out in California. Who knows? There's all kinds of things that these people could be doing. But,
it's really amazing, how accelerated it all is, like you were saying before.
At this point, we have to come to the realization that these things do exist, and people have. There's enough of these people who have found this to be true, where we can have an intelligent conversation about. Interesting also that President Trump, and I believe in using that moniker, President Trump. I think it's terrible when people say Trump. I think it's terrible when people say Obama or Bush. You should give them the honorific that they deserve. They're President Bush, they're President Obama. I think this is ridiculous, and it's going to ridiculous lengths. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. President Trump now wants to start a space force.
Mm-hmm.
Does that strike anybody as a little odd? Why all of a sudden in 2018 do we need a Space Force? What the hell does he know that we don't know?
Well, we actually already had a secret Space Force, but then he's building upon it, basically. But yeah, what does he know? What has he seen that is, making him decide to do this?
There's a lot that's going on that we're not privy to. And another thing that, and I know this because I know somebody who deals in Washington, D.C. all the time, they're filing federal papers to, boy, should I say this? Okay. They're filing federal papers to have JFK exhumed, which I don't think will ever go anywhere, but nonetheless, President Trump believes that there was a conspiracy to kill the president, to JFK. So Trump is one of the biggest allies that we could possibly have in Washington about this.
Mm-hmm.
If he's going to do anything about it, who knows? But I do know the paperwork has been filed. Interesting stuff. And I'm sure there'll be a topic of conversation next weekend when I go down. You're hearing all about it.
Yeah, there's so much stuff going on, and there's just a fraction of it that, some of us know, but yeah, you just gotta pay attention and be aware of your surroundings is one of the main things that they teach you in the military. I mean, it's very important. And don't just, follow what people say are right. Use your gut, trust your instinct, and use your common sense. If you don't have one, build one. But it's very important.
I'll tell you what, I used to think that people had common sense, but now I'm starting to realize not everybody has things in common.
Right.
What's your opinion of these shootings? You're military. Manchurian candidate?
I don't know. A lot of people are saying, it's the government trying to get it passed where we don't have weapons anymore. If we don't have weapons, we can't really defend ourselves. Even China was saying back in the day, China, when they were going to come over and attack, they decided not to because they said behind every blade of grass there's at least 20 guns, because we're so well armed. But the way things are going these days, people are saying it's really, really bad. These things haven't happened before, but back in the day, we've had bombings of school buildings and all kinds of other things. I think it could be because they are dumbing us down and all the different things that they're putting out to us. It could just be the mental psyche breaking down, things that we've been subjected to and whatnot are causing, and the lack of support as far as mental support for people. They say they're giving you mental health, but really they're not. They're actually harming you more than they're helping you. And so many people reach out for help and they're not getting it, and then they're taking it out on these groups of people. And perhaps they didn't reach out for help. Perhaps they're just, video game nuts, or people that just have this different mentality that haven't been given help because of their parents or whatever the case may be. But yeah, a lot of people are saying it's because of the government. It's this hidden agenda to try to get the guns away from us and this and this and that and that. But I kind of feel like it's something more than that. They're breaking us down in so many ways. And the mental stability is one of the ways they're doing it. And people are just lashing out. They do have this way of getting weapons, whether it's through a family member or getting it on your own because you don't have a record, but all of a sudden you just snap and you go out and you harm these people that you don't even know. But who's to say it's not a government agenda? I mean, there's so many possibilities, and I believe anything's possible. But until I get more evidence, I think it's just the mental breakdown of us. We're mentally breaking down. We're socially breaking down. We're looking down at our phones all the time. We're not socially interacting with people. We're doing it through messaging or Facebook or whatnot. We're not just sitting down and talking to each other. And, there's so many breakdowns, layer upon layer upon layer of our environment, whether it's education or upbringing or what we're watching on TV or reading on the media, and it really is bad. But it could be a government agenda. I mean, I don't know. I don't know yet. It's just sad. That's all I know.
Well, I think that, there's a direct link. I read an article there. There's a direct link between people on antidepressants and these shootings.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every person that they've had do these horrific things, has been on an antidepressant. So, is there something going on there? Is there a link? Are they losing track of reality? If they're not doing it on their own, surely their video games are doing it for them.
Well, as far as pharmaceuticals, I do believe that not only the medical field, but the government is in bed with the pharmaceutical company because it is such a big income. There's so many natural things, that can work, but instead they're killing us. Like they're overdosing us, pharmacizing us. They're doing all these different things that are degrading us and killing us, whether it's by suicide or whatnot. It's really insane. But yeah, they're in bed with the pharmaceutical company, so they're just giving us these pills instead of trying to figure out what the problem really is.
Well, and it's destroying not only us, it's destroying the planet too. Do you know we're running out of male fish? You know how nuts this is? We're running out of male fish because these people are flushing these pharmaceuticals down the toilet. It's ending up in our waterways. It's screwing with the fish, and we're running out of male fish. I mean, it's come to this now. You know,
So
how far are we
crazy.
going to do this? In the name of the holy dollar, how far is this going to go? It's incredible. And there's that word again. I got to find another word. But it really is.
Well, there's a plethora of issues out there, and everybody in the chat room will like that because that's the drink word. There's a plethora of issues, and people are flushing their medicine. You're supposed to actually hand it into the hospital or clinic or whatever, and they'll dispose of it properly, so to speak. Who knows how they really do it, And it is affecting our environment. Yeah.
Sure. But people are, look at we're born lazy and stupid, and we have to work our whole lives to correct that.
Right.
It's true. I've never seen a baby, they can be energetic and do tricks. Okay. We're born lazy and stupid by nature, and we have to work our whole lives to change that.
I've actually had a couple babies. Nova was actually scooting herself across the bed at only 7 days old, and about the same time at that age, my youngest daughter was trying to sit up, and she's the one I know has had a past life. But we are at the end of our time. Can you tell our listeners how to find your books, how to find you?
Okay, if you want to find my books, go to my website. I'm not on Amazon. I have pulled my books from Amazon, 310 Reasons, okay? Go to whomurderedbooks.com. All lowercase, one word, whomurderedbooks.com. Buy a book. There's also a thing there where you can contact me. If you want to go to my author's page, you go to Facebook and just type in book series. Each book has its own Facebook page. You can go to Who Murdered Elvis on Facebook, and you can join the community there. You can go to Who Murdered FDR on Facebook, and you can join the community there. Lots and lots of ways to engage and buy a book and contact me. So get yourself out there and buy yourself some Christmas presents.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being my guest tonight, and it was so wonderful having you on the show this evening, Stephen.
Well, Tessa, thanks very much. I had a ball. This was fun. I like to talk about my work. This was fun.
Yeah, I love to have fun. I don't like to interrogate. I just like to let the dice fall where they may.
Well, it was a good time. I can't believe I actually stood awake through the whole thing. 3 o'clock in the morning here.
Right. Well, we do have an after party as well. But thank you, everyone. In Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else in the universe you're listening tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night, and we're actually having Conspiracy Sunday. And you can find that on spacedoutradio.com. You guys, don't forget, we're all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, We own the night.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Hey, until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my space cases out there. You guys have a wonderful Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon. I'll see you back here tomorrow night. And if you guys would like to join me for the after party, call in 970-335-9596. I'll see you there. You guys take care of my U's.